Tonight is November 10th, Tuesday. It is 6:30. We have a quorum in chambers and one council member that has joined us virtually. So it's 6:30 and I am calling us to order. The City of Bastrop reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. If you would all please stand, we will say both of our pledges. If you'll please remain standing, this evening we have Police Chaplain Hardy Overton, and he will be leading us in our invocation tonight. Chaplain Overton.
Lord, as we come before you this evening, Lord, we just want to say thank you. Father, we just want to ask you to place a hedge of protection over this meeting, this council meeting, to watch over our mayor and our city manager, and all the community leaders and all the ones that's on staff here, Almighty God. I want to ask you to bless this meeting, Almighty God. Give us the guidance that we need. And as your word says in Psalms 133, how good and pleasant it is when brothers in Christ, brothers and sisters in Christ, come together in unity. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Overton. You may be seated.
I have no sound. Now I can. It's been silent up until now.
I wanted to thank Chaplain Overton. He was with Chaplain Burke, and our chaplains serve such a vital, important part of our community, and we're always so happy to have them with us. All right, Council, we're moving on to item 4A, the Mayor's Report, and I'll let the public know, not everyone was aware, but at 6 o'clock this evening we celebrated Becca Sexton is our librarian. She's been with us for about a year and has made the difficult personal decision to resign from the City of Bastrop, and quite frankly is taking a job about an hour closer to home, give or take. We'll miss Becca. There was a huge showing from the library board tonight, and we just wish her the very best in the future and appreciate all that she was able to do. She certainly made a huge difference in a very short time. As I often do, I'll talk about the things that I've done since our last council meeting. Our last council meeting was on October 28th, and on October 29th, I participated in the tabletop drill called COVAC that was put on by the Texas Division of Emergency Management that was really a statewide planning effort of how to get the vaccine out. So that was 4 hours of tons and tons of questions, learned a lot, and it was nice to see people from across the state trying to proactively address any issues that might be involved with that. And then I did something I haven't done in over a year. I left town with my husband in an RV, and we left on October 30th, and he drove 1,083 miles yesterday to get me home so I could sleep in my own bed last night so I could be prepared for tonight. So I doubt he's watching, and I think he's probably sleeping and trying to stop seeing those white lines. While I was out of town, I did attend the library board meeting virtually on November 2nd, and I was able to participate in the emergency management check-ins, and I'll talk about that more when we get to item 9A. But today I was on the Rotary call, and our new Senator Sarah Eckhart was the presenter, and I know that our city attorney and staff, and this will come up later in the agenda as well, but I already have the email and cell phone number for her chief of staff. So she's absolutely wants to do a good job for Bastrop, and we're looking forward to working with her and wish her the best of luck. One bad thing about being out of town is that I missed the Sugar Shack anniversary. But more importantly, possibly more importantly, I missed the Jelly Belly guy. And I'm very disappointed in that, but I loved your video, and just, again, 25 years in business is a remarkable, remarkable achievement, and I would like to give her a round of applause. I have two other thanks to give. On October 20th, I was invited to present to the second graders at the Calvary Episcopal School, and when I got back from vacation, I had a lovely set of letters from the second graders thanking me for coming and visiting with them. They were, I don't know if they were happier to get my business card or a map of Bastrop, but that seemed to be a theme in their thank you notes, and I really appreciate the kids taking time to do that. And then my final item is that tomorrow is Veterans Day. And in honor of Veterans Day, the city offices will be closed. And it is my very distinct privilege to serve with two veterans, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and Councilmember Peterson. And I appreciate their service, the service that they gave to their country and the service that you give to your city now. Just very, very appreciative. Thank you. And then for the public, and as a reminder to you, council, although I feel in my heart I don't have to remind you, we aren't having our second meeting in November, so our next council meeting will be December 8th. And with that, we are moving on to council member reports. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Nothing to add tonight, Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, what were you doing 49 years ago?
Basic training.
He sat down and said, you know where I was 49 years ago? What'd you tell me? It was your second day of, not that it made an impression on him, but he knows exactly what day that was.
Fun times, huh, Councilmember Peterson? Fun times.
Councilmember Rogers?
Well, since you were out of town, you missed the Halloween, the drive-through Halloween event that the YMCA did, and that was a lot of fun. The kids were all hanging out of the cars. They were all being safe, but they were hanging out of the cars, and the line went on and on. So I think the YMCA really did a great job on tackling a wonderful event they normally have during these trying times. But I think the kids still wanted candy. They didn't care. They still wanted candy. So other than that, I went to a Main Street Christmas meeting, so we've got that all kicked off. So we got some exciting things that Rebecca's bringing on to us, and that's everything.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Rogers. Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I just want to say also, I want to say thank you to all the veterans. Proud to be one. And I just want to do a shout out to all the active duty personnel, military related. They're doing an excellent thing for our country, and we appreciate them also. And it was 59 years ago when I was in basic training.
Well said. Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. Councilmember Ennis?
Thank you, Mayor. I chaired the third meeting of the Cultural Arts Master Plan ad hoc work group, and I want to thank our city manager for an excellent job of presenting and organizing and working through our discussions. We're making some great headway.
Thank you so much for your service with doing that, Councilmember Ennis. I really appreciate it. Councilmember Jackson?
I just want to say that since our last meeting, I attended our Parks Board meeting, and we had a lot of different things on our agenda. Of course, talking about the improvements to the skate park that's being worked on right now, and several other projects. We've got some things that will be coming to council probably in January with some improvements and some other upgrades and things that we're doing in some of the parks. And I think you'll be excited to see what's happening with that. Today, I also did a virtual County Master Parks Plan meeting, and that's looking good. And so they're doing a lot of different things and working on finalizing their Master Parks Plan so that they can have more parks, since they have 3 parks, in the county, and they're looking to add more. So a lot of good things going on with parks, not only in our city, but also in the county. And I just wanted to say, since I wasn't there for Becca, to let her know that we are definitely going to miss her and enjoyed her services here with us.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. And we are moving on to item 4C, City Manager's Report.
Colin, you can quickly along. Thank you, Mayor. So yesterday evening was the annual, although it's been a little off schedule due to COVID, but our annual police appreciation event. Councilmember Rogers and her husband were there, and my wife and I were there as well. And really appreciate all the work that Chief Nagy put into organizing the event. We had some photographs. Thank you, Colin, for the photographs on the screen showing smiling faces when they're not being covered up by a mask. Next slide, please. And I'll just quickly go over these next slides. The weekly memo, Council, that I'll send out on Friday will include this information as well and provide a little bit of detail. But one of the things that happens at these awards events is the recognition of a special effort and recognitions and promotions, and the chief did a very nice job of that. Several of our officers received their field training officer bar. A couple of them received their instructor bar. Chief Nagy told the story that led to Monty Sampson. That would help. How's that? Is that better? I'm not going to repeat any of that, other than to say that we will summarize all of this in Friday's weekly memo. Next slide, please, Colin. As council knows, we've had a couple of new additions to the police department, and they were recognized and received and had a bit of a pinning ceremony. Also for newly promoted Sergeant William Reitmeyer and Assistant Chief Vicki Stefanik, they received their promotional pinning as well. This didn't happen for Chief Nagy last night because he didn't have all of the members of his family there that he would like to attend that pinning ceremony, and so we will schedule that for an upcoming city council meeting and do it upright at the beginning of a council meeting here soon. Next slide, please. Other special awards, the Civilian Service of the Year award went to Amy Jordan. I will add my endorsement of that. Officer Jordan does a fantastic job and wears a lot of hats and keeps up with a lot of stuff, and I've learned to appreciate her in my still relatively short time here. Officer of the Year was identified as Officer Robert Jordan. Supervisor of the Year, Patrol Sergeant Dale Hamilton, and the police chief gave Special Award of Excellence to Patrol Officer Joseph Barnes and Assistant Chief Vicki Stefanik, and all of that was just, again, really well done, and I felt honored to be there. So thank you for that. Council, a quick update on what's going on with Main Street. Real good progress has been made these last couple of evenings, and work should be continuing there as we speak to complete the overlay work. Trey and I were talking with our construction manager, Jerry Pallady, just before the meeting started. Not completely sure we'll finish tonight, but we did build a little bit of contingency in there. If we don't finish it tonight, we'll finish it up the next night, and then in the next couple of days after that, we'll complete the striping work, and that will be reason to celebrate. Next slide, please. And another reason to celebrate will happen on Thursday evening. Council, thank you for those of you who have RSVP'd that you will be there. Ann and her team have really worked hard to make this a special event, and we look forward to that. Excuse me. And we will be celebrating Main Street on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, November the 28th, and that will kick off our Lost Pines Christmas celebration. We'll have a ribbon cutting at 11:45 that morning. The Wassail Fest will begin at noon, and then our this year virtual Christmas tree lighting will get underway. We will open the gates over at Film Alley at 4, and the show will start with a literal show, and then the virtual tree lighting will happen at 6. And Council, you'll continue to receive information about that as we get closer to that date. Council, I've been reporting to you on the very important process we're going through to hire our very first full-time firefighters. Chief Rosales and Assistant Chief Eric DeArmit have been working really hard to make sure we do this the right way and that we hire the right people for this important role. And they did have several candidates go through the written and physical exercises last Friday. And from that, I believe we are narrowing down to 12 candidates that we will start interviewing on Friday of this week, and we look forward to making those employment offers shortly after that. Really good job to Chief Rosales and how he's led that effort. And council, your next council meeting will be that first meeting in December, as the mayor indicated. And most of these items on this list, I think you're already familiar with. We are working on a council meeting schedule. We'll ask you to approve that for calendar year 21 and working on that. You know that we need to approve a funding agreement with the Economic Development Corporation with regard to the CARES funding that they use for those grants that they awarded earlier this year. Tracy Waldron is working on some minor budget amendments now that we're getting close to closing out fiscal 20. We have some carryover appropriations we need council to take care of, and so that'll be on that agenda too. Next slide, please. You will consider on second reading the shot clock legislation-inspired uniform submittal schedule that Jennifer's been working on that has been reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. You heard a presentation at your last meeting from Curtis Hancock on what we plan to do with our sidewalk connectivity project. We'll be asking you to award that contract on December the 8th. We plan a workshop discussion with you at the request of the Cemetery Board regarding the issue of old headstones that are in need of repair. Currently, city ordinance prevents us from the city from stepping in and making those repairs. So there are some important policy and legal issues at play. We are starting the conversation about all that with the city attorney, and we will present that set of subjects to you on December the 8th. We do plan to bring the speed hump policy that was the subject of discussion at your last meeting on December the 8th, and we're bringing you something to vote on if you're ready to do it. And then later this evening, I will be presenting a proposed reorganization plan. I'm not asking you to vote on any of that tonight, but here in Bastrop, our administrative code establishes by ordinance what city departments are, and since I'm suggesting an amendment to that, I'll ask council to consider voting on that on December the 8th. And I believe that's my last slide. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, City Manager.
Mayor? Yes, I just have a question, just so the public knows. How many fighters are we hiring total?
6.
All right, just so everybody.
And
how
just
many
because she
we're
brought
doing.
up the subject and it makes me happy, how many applications?
Over 47, was that the number? I'm looking for somebody who knows for sure. I believe it was 47.
Yeah, I knew it was
Yeah.
north of 40, so
Yeah,
they've got
north of
their
40.
work cut out for them, and it's going to be fantastic for the entire community to have full-time firefighters. So, thank you, Councilmember Rogers. Any other questions for City Manager? All right, Council, if you'll move to page 2. We are on the top of page 2. This is item 4D. Receive update from the Capital Area Rural Transportation Systems regarding a micro-mobility hub at the corner of Main and Spring Street. Mr. Marsh, thank you for joining us this evening. Trey, are you going to introduce him, or are you going to flip slides for him? There we go. Okay.
Which way? That goes that way? Okay.
And Mr. Marsh, you're very tall, and you might want to make that microphone go up a little bit, because Councilmember Jackson wants to be able, and the people at home want to be able to hear you. Thank you so much for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Hoffman. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about what we think is an exciting new way to get around Bastrop. But I want to be respectful of your time, certainly, but I don't get to talk to you that often, so I'd like to kind of give you an overview of some other things we got going on, if that's all right. Services that CARTS provides in Bastrop and all through our district includes our interurban coach services. The interurban coach services are regional services that operate between all points in our district and exchange passengers in Austin. It's a scheduled service that operates out of 8 bus terminals we operate in, and it also is the Greyhound connection for anyone that wishes to ship packages or travel on the Greyhound network. We are essentially Greyhound in this region. The next service that we operate that you may or may not be familiar with is called the Metro Connector. We operate services through a regional mobility agreement with Capital Metro to wherein we share resources and routes. So an example of our Metro Connector would be the Route 990 that provides daily service 4 times a day from Austin to Elgin that becomes a metro route when it gets to Manor. We also provide service for them in other areas, Georgetown, Lago Vista, and Manor. Municipal bus services are services we operate where it's a fixed route schedule through the town. You'll be familiar with the one we've operated here since 1988. Because of COVID restrictions, that route has been terminated for now, and we'll talk about that more later. We also operate the service in the city of San Marcos, one of our major hubs there. Country Bus is what everybody's probably most familiar with, our bright green buses that you see that travel all through the county. They provide service to anyone who wishes to call and schedule a ride in advance. Those are curb-to-curb buses. They're open to anyone, but our primary audiences are people seeking medical services and the elderly. Disability transportation, all of our buses are accessible, so any route you're operating on in our district is going to be a disability transportation bus. And the intercity buses we talked about previously, we operate platform facilities in San Marcos for the Amtrak, and we operate Greyhound services from our 8 transit stations. Adding to our family of services, beginning in January officially in Bastrop, we're introducing what we call CARTS Now. This would be a micro-mobility project which will primarily give the customer an Uber-like experience, but with trained, certified drivers, and it will operate point to point anywhere in the city. And we'll talk more about how it works as we go through the presentation. This is our district. We operate in 9 counties. You'll see the shaded area in the middle is the urbanized area, which includes Capital Metro and some of the services we operate for them there. The colored lines you see are all of our interurban routes. They all hub in Austin right now at Saltillo Plaza. We are working on some other things that we'll talk about later, but that's the district that we operate in. Stop me anywhere, anytime for questions. I know we'd all like to not talk about COVID-19, but you know, it's been quite an impact on our services, as you can expect. We've been very diligent, as you all have been and all public agencies have been, in protecting our customers and our employees. And so we have a number of strategies that we use to make sure that our services are safe. We have a few projects in Bastrop I'd like to update you on as we go through the next part of the Bastrop station over on Hospital Drive. We built that station in 1991, and it's been high time for renovation. I think you'll be very pleased when we're finished with its look, and it's being updated and with better lighting, better facility, and fresh coat of paint and all the other things you do to rehab a facility. We're also at that facility building a staging area and charging station for electric taxis. We'll talk a little bit more about electric taxis coming forward, but that's going to be the hub that the electric taxis will introduce in cooperation with our partners later in the presentation. We're also upgrading our express service to Austin. We have new equipment. We are opening a park and ride in Tucker Hill at our new facility, and we're going to try to enhance that service and make it to where it's really a reliable and quick way for people to get downtown. We're going to have larger buses, and we're going to do a marketing campaign to make sure more people know there's an option to get to downtown. I failed to mention, speaking of marketing, that the Community Engagement and Marketing Director for CARTS is here, Dana Platt. You'll all recognize her from many meetings you see in the community that Dana's always at. She has a lot of area to cover, but she's very well versed in what we do and is always available for groups that need to know more about CARTS. Also, as part of our expansion, we're working with Capital Metro and Austin Bergstrom International Airport to make connections on our Purple route so that people can use our service to get to the airport. We go by there 8 times a day, and so we're working on having that service brought in online beginning in January, depending on the agreements we make with ABIA. And most importantly, we're building our new transit facility in conjunction with Capital Metro. Our partners include the Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority, the City of Austin, and TxDOT. It's at 5th and Shady Lane. This will be where all of our interurban routes hub. And we're building it together with Capital Metro so that one side of the station is Metro services, one side's CART services, and people from both directions can access available transportation at either point. We're putting all our scheduled work together. When we open in January, I hope to give y'all some invitations because we're going to be really happy to open this. It's going to be a landmark facility for us, and it's going to afford passengers from all of our district to have ready access to Metro services, and also for people using Metro services to have ready access to get to the country. So that, if all works out well, will be open in January 2021. There's what it looks like now. This piece of property was dedicated in 1928 to be a roadside park for Highway 20, and it has sat there vacant since that time. It's a triangular piece of property, not good for anything but what we did with it. And TxDOT has leased it to us for 40 years, and it's going to be an addition not only to the community, but for people that access our services. The reason the toll road people like us and the reason they help us support it is because their 183 toll road opens right, we're on the apron of the 183 toll road, and that toll road is going to allow us a lot better connections throughout our district for what we do. 3 or 4 years, Trey and I have been working on Spring and Main. It started out just to be a little project where we wanted to have a hub for our fixed route, and we've been working on that diligently. Right, Trey? Y'all had a lot of work to do downtown. Your downtown's looking wonderful. Congratulations on all the work you've gotten done. It's a pity that we don't have conditions back to where all the people that come to enjoy downtown can, but they're going to be back. And we work with a design firm called McCann Adams Studio, pretty renowned firm. And I want to warn you, when you hire urban designers to do a conceptual plan for you, they will exercise their craft. So the next slide's pretty startling, and Jana McCann, who's the designer for this, gave me a long speech to give y'all about all the things this hub does under her concept, but I'm not going to read that to you, but I did send it to Trey so he can provide it to you at a later time. Essentially, with the electric cabs and the carts now, we want to have a nice presence downtown to where that strategic location by the Opera House and right downtown, and its visibility, and the fact that we have been dedicating it for our purposes this long gives us an opportunity. I think that this conceptual plan, I'm not here for an ask. I'm here for a what can we do. I really like the idea of us turning that into something that will serve as a mobility hub where people always know in Bastrop how they can get around Bastrop, and how tourists can. When we first envisioned this service we're going to introduce here, you know, electric cabs and carts now and all that, we really thought the electric cabs would be our tourist vehicle. In other words, it would be available on the weekends and late nights and be a way for people to zip around while they're visiting Bastrop. But COVID happened, so we've modified our plan somewhat. So they wanted to make it a focal point, our designers, and as you can see, they did. And I think that the crux of this is that we obviously don't think that that's what we should do particularly, but we like the concept of having a place where people can receive information, access information about Bastrop, and at the same time have transportation available. So maybe as we go forward, maybe we can find some partners and develop something there that we all think would be a benefit to the community. So Carts Now is something that we have been working on grant funds for a couple of years. We helped Lone Star Clean Fuels develop a Department of Energy grant. They got it funded. We got a project funded by TxDOT to do a pilot in Bastrop for microtransit. So we've managed to merge the two projects together in a way to try to bring more to Bastrop for nothing, and to use y'all as our test bed. You've been our test bed for many years in things we've done, and we're proud to try to offer something that we think is going to be perhaps what a better answer for how we get people around town and have more people be able to access it. So we got a DOE grant. It's not our money. We're complementing our service by running their cabs on our software. And so they're going to be operating electric cabs, which I think will have a future in your city going forward because they are very tourist friendly. They're very attractive to the casual user, and they're open air. So they're going to probably start rolling in December. They want to get started. They're probably going to roll just one vehicle at first. And we're excited about that partnership. So how do you catch a ride with Carts Now? You pull out your phone like you would with Uber. There'll be a Carts Now app you download. You punch a button and it tells you the vehicle will be there in 6 minutes or 4 minutes or 8 minutes or somewhat less than 15 minutes. For those that want to use a call center, we're going to operate a call center. The app will give you many options for payment, or you can pay cash. We're going to take cash as well. That's the zone. The zone you see that's hatch marked is the taxi zone. Because they're slow-speed vehicles, their top speed is 35 miles an hour. They're restricted to certain streets. My operations people and their people came out and did a thorough review, and we've established those zones. So what that zone means is that anybody in that zone can get a ride anytime they want between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. You'll notice we have schools located there as interest points. We've reached out to schools to make sure they understood that we're not going to come on their campus. We're not going to be picking up their students. We don't think it will be a way to get everybody to school or for people to get away from school, but we will have stops nearby for like the casual need, like somebody's kid needs to go home sick, or if it's after hours, after, you know, student council practice or whatever, that they can have a ride. So I have another slide, don't I? Oops. I'm sorry. Did I just screw that up? Help, Colin. Help, Colin. Is that where I was? Getting the word out. We're having a focus group, which we arranged with Bastrop Community Cares and the medical community, because 2 years ago we had a similar meeting, and a lot of their interest generated what we tried to do here in town. Obviously, it's only going to be available in the city limits. We're not going to, but we expect that having more focused service in the city limits will let our country buses go farther out in the communities more frequently to get people in. But we're having a focus group with them to spread the word. We're doing, we'll probably do some pop-ups. We're trying to provide information as much as we can. And we're going to probably enlist your aid as much as we can. Because y'all are community leaders and because y'all are such an engaged council, we're going to ask y'all to take some of the first rides, And we'd like to offer any information that Dana can provide to help distribute on social media accounts that y'all have. We're certainly doing all that. We have a community engagement team under contract that's working for us and doing some of that. But I think this is really something that we can all be proud of once we get it going and we see what the benefits may be. So January 11th, pending local conditions. I mean, it's also vague as about what's going to be happening in January, but we'll start rolling service full time. The taxis are going to start running December 14th. The taxis are going to be free. So under their DOE grant, they have to provide the service free. So they'll be free, and I hope that everybody can avail themselves of that. I'm really interested in Visit Bastrop and the taxis forming a relationship as time goes by as to what they can do for you guys when tourist trade comes back. And I hope I didn't take too much time, and I hope I didn't just sputter through everything and nobody knows what I said. Any questions?
Some really exciting stuff. Councilmember Ennis?
Standing. I have a recommendation for you on the mobility hub.
Yes, sir.
Design-wise, since this is going to be in the historic district.
Yeah.
And normally things like that have to go through a certificate of approval, appropriateness phase. I would recommend that you get some of our design gurus on our Historic Landmark Commission with your team once you start getting to final design, because they can give you some good input. And once that certificate of appropriateness is passed, then you're going to allay anybody out in the community who says, well, I don't like that design. You've got some fallback.
I appreciate that. I'll work through with Paul and Trey to do that.
Great.
The designer said the tower was to bring the bridge. That was her design concept. And Trey, if you would share that, her explanation of all that she did. She's very passionate about her work, and at some point, though, we just need to build something that we can use and go from there. But thank you very much for that. We'll work through that process.
Councilmember, any other questions, Councilmember?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
It's very exciting, and we appreciate you having faith in the community for us to be your guinea pig, and especially wonderful when we're able to benefit from federal and state dollars for the community. And our YMCA director's in the back row, and she has done things in the past in the summer to help kids know how to catch a bus and how to read a bus schedule. And I'm sure that they'll already be downloading the app. So
Trust me, Terry was on our mind when we were making our zone in the pool, okay? So our route goes as far as right now, as far as the ranger station, but come summer, if summer comes, We'll make some pool runs. But yeah, we'd love to have kids ride that in the summertime and any other time. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you very
Marsh.
much.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes, I just wanted to tell Dave or Mr. Marsh that Carts has definitely come a long ways, and I'm so proud of all the improvements. I was following along on the presentation, and it looks like there are a lot of the full service launch and all the mobility deals. It looks wonderful, and it's definitely more than we had from many years ago. I remember early on with the Carts program, and it's definitely improved, and I commend him because he's been there for the longest time helping guide a lot of this, so thank you.
Thanks, Doc. I'm Dave, not Mr. Marsh. Mr. Marsh was my daddy, and he's not with us any longer. Thanks. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Really
y'all.
appreciate your presentation. Colin, as you know, I like to do, we have a couple of folks with us on the consent agenda, and having done that in my previous career where you're sitting in the audience for a consent agenda item, I'm going to go ahead and pull the consent agenda forward. Council, is there anybody who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Anyone in the audience want an item pulled from the consent agenda? Madam Secretary, if you will please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 8A, consider action to approve City Council minutes from the October 27th, 2020 regular meeting. Item 8B, consider action to approve resolution number R-2020-110 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the Bastrop Public Library to accept a grant in the amount of $12,000 from the Hatcher Foundation for the purchase of laptops and hotspots for use by library patrons in providing an effective date. Item 8C, consider action to approve resolution number R-2020-115 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a public improvement plan agreement with Ranch Road Development LLC for Section 7 of Pecan Park, as attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Item 8D, consider action to approve resolution number R-2020-113, approving a second amendment to the Destination and Marketing Services Agreement, attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Item 8E, consider action to approve resolution number R-2020-116 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, confirming appointment by the mayor to the Hunters Crossing Local Government Corporation Board as required in Section 3.08 of the city's charter and establishing an effective date. Item 8F, consider action to approve resolution number R-2020-114 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the Fourth Amendment to Consent Agreement for the Colony Municipal Utility District Number 1 and successor districts to be created by division of the Colony Municipal Utility District Number 1, as attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents and establishing an effective date. This concludes the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Ennis and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously, and I know there's at least one family who's happy they're going to see their dad before midnight. So, all right, we are going to go back in our agenda, back to page 2. We are at work sessions and briefing. Item 5A, receive a presentation and hold discussion with Jonathan Jenkins regarding the new community development project. Mr. Jobe, are you going to introduce this, or are we going to go straight to Mr. Jenkins? All right, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's great to be here. Thank you for this evening. I want to just first off saying thanks for welcoming to Bastrop. I'm from Euless, Texas, which is in the DFW area on just this side of the airport toward Fort Worth. And so quite a 3-hour drive down here I made today, and I really appreciate the warm welcome I've had from the city so far. Paul and Trey and Allison and Jennifer here at the city have been awesome and super helpful, and meeting with the mayor as well has been great. We're in the ETJ as the project, so meeting with Judge Poppy and Commissioner Mell, who were in his district, Gene and Cameron at the city EDC, Adina at county EDC, Terry at the YMCA, Gwen from Bastrop Can. Everyone has just welcomed us with open arms, and so it's great to be talking to a community that has such a warm and welcoming feeling. So I appreciate that, first off. And so the purpose of tonight is just to give you a brief introduction to what we do at New Communities, what we're looking at doing in Bastrop, and how we would like to be a part of your community here. So I'll spend about 10 minutes just kind of giving an introduction. Once I'm through with that, I'll leave some time for Q&A, and we'll just go through. So as I mentioned, New Communities, NEW stands for New Eco-Sustainable Urban Communities. And no time better than now as we rethink what communities should be like and the interaction of communities and what it means to be in a community. And for us, we're really focused on housing and new types of community housing and mixed-use developments. And we believe that housing is a central element, that it's not just a house that you live in, but people are looking to be part of a community they belong to. So we think of everything in that idea of community. To back up just a minute, I mentioned my name is Jonathan. My background is in technology. So I grew up in Euless. I actually went to Asia for 10 years, plus or minus 10 years in China. I speak Mandarin, and my background over there was doing mission work, but also having a business and a technology business. So I did retail technology. When I came back to the States, most of my friends were working at Amazon or Zappos, Tom's Shoes, a lot of e-commerce companies. And it was just about the time, 6-7 years ago, they were all thinking of opening physical brick and mortar retail stores. But they already knew that the malls were dying, and so they wanted to create new types of experiences in physical stores. And so we started building really high-end modular structures that could be deployed all over the country, from New York to Dallas to Austin, working with Dallas Cowboys to Harley Davidson to Zappos, which is owned by Amazon, to Tom's Shoes, building these new type of modular structures and experiences in the retail sector. My partner with that is a gentleman named Giorgio Baruso. He looks Italian, and he is Italian. And if he ever shows up, he'll be in a black jacket, black shirt, black pants, black shoes, sipping espresso. So he plays the role. And so Giorgio is our architect, my partner in the company, and our designer of a lot of the modular experiences and what we build and the way we think about building those kind of experiences. Our manufacturing partner is also a group out of Italy, but they're actually also 60% of their business is in the United States. Their name is Perma-Stiliza. Now, Perma-Stiliza's background is building huge architectural projects. So they built Dubai's airport. They helped build some of the World Trade Centers in New York. They helped build Apple's headquarters in Cupertino. So a lot of these huge architectural projects you'll see around the world and famous designs in the Guggenheim Museum and Google's head in London, the Shard in London. This is the team, the same team that builds these massive skyscrapers, helps us build these modular types of living units and communities. We sat down with their board and their CEO a few years ago, and we said a lot of real estate developers and companies are coming to us wanting to use modular not just for retail, but for living and to build communities. And their team said this is exactly how we think the future of construction is, even to build skyscrapers. And so we worked with them for the last few years designing our new types of units for our communities. Our focus, as I mentioned, was on technology, and a lot of the technology areas around the country have struggled with affordable housing. Tech companies pay a very high salary to their engineers, but it prices out a lot of other people who work and live in the community, including first responders, teachers, and there's organizations all over the country like Challenge Seattle that's working on affordable housing, PSP, which are the oil companies that are working in Midland, Odessa to provide more affordable housing and different types of education for the Permian Basin. And so as we started thinking about this, we really started getting to the crux of the issue, which is how do you build these new types of communities and these structures? And so internally, we call them nomad units. So that's kind of like the product name, like Apple has an iPhone. This is our iPhone, these nomad units. And think of them very much like Legos. You can connect them together to make different sizes, different shapes, and different uses. They can be living, they can be retail, they can be food and beverage, they can be schools, they can be a lot of different types of use cases. And so if we focus on the living, because obviously if you're building a community, you need people to live there, and that's the crutch of how we focus of thinking about the people and the experience of them that are living in our communities. The living units can be as small as 320 square feet. Think of those as like little hotel units, or what I'd call very efficient units. They are what you can see here in pictures that looks all glass, not because anybody wants to live in a glass house, but this is outside of Venice, Italy, and the mayor wanted a nice place to have his picture taken as they're going around the unit so you could see right through it, and so you can see into the unit. And so this is 4 modules that are connected together to make a small 320 square foot efficiency kind of a hotel unit. At the same time, you can take those modules and connect them and click them together to create other types of sizes. So you can have 1 bedrooms or other areas where you have a center courtyard in the middle. 1 unit takes 2 people, less than 2 hours to install on site. And so the ability to install it very quickly and efficiently and in an eco-sustainable way is a big focus of what we do. You can have larger size units, 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units. You can make single-family housing out of this. We actually have another product that we'll be deploying hopefully here in Bastrop as a new single-family unit we'll be doing. And the look and feel of the units can be customizable to fit inside the community. That's a really big deal to us, is making sure it doesn't look like it landed from Mars or the Jetsons, but being able to, it blends into the community. And so you can change the look and feel depending on where it's being deployed, whether it's uber kind of modern or whether you blend in nature and the environment. This is a project out in Nevada that we're working on right now, and you're blending in natural elements into the units. They can stack and go vertical where you can have more elements. This is a project at an old church that we're working on in Odessa, actually. And even the internal part of it, you can customize the flooring, the wall paneling, the different attributes of inside your home. They can look as modular as you want, or you can put facades on them to make them look like traditional homes. And so again, it really makes the fit of what the community is we're going into, so it blends into that community. The units have been tested and certified. This was a big deal for us. A lot of startups that are doing kinds of modular building, they don't think about code. They don't think about ADA till they build them and put them there, and everybody's like, what are you doing? So we spent the last, it took a long time, but we got certifications in like the state of California. So these things have been wind and water blown. They have been on seismic platforms being shaken. The state of California went over to Italy to inspect that facility. There's another facility in Connecticut. And so they all have sprinkler systems in them. So they have the highest quality. The same engineering that went into a skyscraper goes into these living units. At the same focus, our communities are not just about providing a house, but providing a mixed-use environment. And so as I mentioned before, they can be multifamily, they can be connected or detached condo units or apartments. There's cafe versions in a project in Dallas at a office park for cafes that you can see there. There are units that are blending technology. This is a grab and go with iFi, who's a partner out of San Francisco. I was one of the first ones in 2015 that tested a system where you walked into a store, grabbed it, and walked out, and it charged it for you without you having to interact with anybody. So this micro grocery concept in our communities we'll talk about here in Bastrop, instead of having one large grocery store, we're putting small micro grocery stores really close to the houses. If you're like me, when you run out of something, there's about 5 things on my list that if I'm out of, Dr. Pepper, sun-dried tomatoes, and goat cheese, because I live with Italians a lot, so it's like the Texas Italian cuisine in the fridge. I have to go to the grocery store, and that takes a while. But if you have these micro groceries near where people are living, literally can walk out their house, walk 3 or 4 feet, grab what they need, and go. And we will program that product that's in that store based on who is living within a walking distance of that unit. So that's a really cool technology with iFi. Retail units, other types of units like co-working office space units, thinking about how education is done in schools, and we can talk about that a little bit later. Everything that you're thinking now, we have a hospital partner also in Reno thinking about COVID, and another COVID partner. At this point in our history and what's happening, everyone from hospitals to schools to housing is thinking about how to rethink physical infrastructure, right? And how to build those kind of infrastructures. And so that's the kind of things that we're working on. My grandpa was a Church of Christ preacher for 62 years, so I liked this project, which is thinking about church buildings who ebb and flow with attendance and classroom spaces they need, and how do you do things like that. And so for us, when we think about communities being reimagined, this is not what I like. This to me is a community built around a car, not around people, right? And so you start with the street and the driveway and the car, and you really don't know your neighbors. My son has a friend that lives behind us, and I feel like he's trapped in a cage because he talks to the kid through the fence, right? Hey, how are you doing? And so the way that that community has been structured over the last 50 years, since plus, it's difficult because we've kind of lost that connection. So we think about much more blending our communities into the natural environment, and also how do we blend those with technology. If you think about what's happened recently, deliveries, grocery delivery, package delivery is a big deal. There's lots of technology that can make that more efficient. The problem is our cities have not been designed for that from the start. Our sidewalks have not been designed for that. Our lanes have not been designed for that. So you could have great little Kiwi bots that are all over certain areas, but they can't go on a lot of streets, right? So how do you get food delivery, other kinds of deliveries? You can design a community around that from the beginning. You create a much better experience for everyone living there. And so let's talk about Bastrop. Sorry, that was really quick, but hopefully it gave you a little overview of what we do. So Bastrop, my wife has a twin sister. She lives in Austin. I told her we were excited about doing a project in this area, and the first thing Summer, who's her twin sister, said is, you have to go to Bastrop. And so when I looked at that and I thought about this new eco-sustainable urban community, the first thing I did was pull up Google Maps, and I pulled up Google Maps of Bastrop. And what caught my eye immediately, and you talk about Providence, was this piece of property that's right there kind of in the middle, right outside the city limits in the ETJ 969, there is a big chunk of green. You see all those trees? It's about 300 acres of natural forest of trees. And when we think about new eco-sustainable communities, we're not the typical developer that says, let's just knock everything down, build on a flat pad, and there it goes. So when we saw that on Google Maps, I was like, wow. Then we married up Google Maps with properties that were for sale or recently listed, and it just so happened that property was one of the properties that came up about the exact same time we started looking at Bastrop. So to me, that's something that tells you the door's opening in the right direction. With that, so the project is in the city ETJ. It's 410 acres. Right there you can see highlighted in purple. It borders to the south of the Colony. It's right north of 71 there. There's a Highway 20 connection we'll talk about later that was proposed to come up through the property. It's at the end of Blakey, where Blakey would continue through. So it's right at a central hub of where Bastrop is growing on that side of it, and what's happening with Tesla, coming 20 minutes away from Austin that direction, and the community here. And again, we love the trees. So when you think about this community, we really got to think about the goals and the values that we want to bring to Bastrop. And you have to pardon me because I'm going to show my age. I don't have my glasses on me, so I'm going to try to read this from this far away and see if I can pass the eye test. So the first is to build around the wildlife and the forest, right? And so these deer are actually pictures I took while I was out in the community. Those deer are some of my stakeholders in the project, right? So I need to look, if they're all gone by the time we're done, we failed, right? And so this is the idea of how do you integrate to the environment, not destroy the environment. One quick story, the city of La Quinta, California, there's a part of land they have there that it's next to a ridge. They have these protected goats. Can't really build anything there most of the time because the construction would disturb the goats. What's nice about talking with them about our project, what they're interested in our units, we don't disturb the goats because it comes and gets installed within 2 hours on site. And so those deer are some of our stakeholders. The second thing is being eco-sustainable about how you think about development, creating an experience that's not just for the citizens who live in the community, but the entire community of Bastrop, and encourage ecotourism and the idea that come and see what Bastrop has to offer in the natural environment that's here. Focus on feet, not cars, as I mentioned, ability to think that we get people out of their house walking around and mobile transportation, which was great when Allison was talking to me about your new B3 code. Provide affordable workforce housing community that focus on health and wellness. This community fails if no one can afford to live there. So I have a 6-year-old and 2 twins on the way, so it needs to be a community that is built for people that have a growing family. The one thing that someone in Seattle mentioned to me is they said, we love your concept because if a young family moves into town and next thing you know they get pregnant, they need a nursery, they typically outgrow their home. Here you can ship them to the nursery and the home grows with the family instead of the family outgrowing the home. So that's how we think about those kind of things. high tech and be able to blend in technology. Specifically, we think there's a great opportunity for ag tech in Bastrop and kind of highlighting the future of agricultural tech, given that Austin's the tech capital of Texas and this, the region of the U.S. A commercial center that brings unique experiences to Bastrop. Y'all have great Mexican restaurants, but I think I've been told a couple times we don't need any more Mexican food. So unique kinds of experiences that are food and related and commerce. And again, a design that blends into the environment. So what does that look like? We've talked about a little of this. I'll skip through how you think about building the units into the environment. How do you use natural materials and really not think about the fences being just the standard 8-foot high privacy fences that you see in all the natural subdivisions. There's some creative solutions. Ecotourism, Moment Factory is a great company that works with a lot of the retail partners I talked about. We're talking with them about a 5-acre part of the project. I'm calling it Bastrop Lights, which is basically a nature walk at nighttime, highlighting the natural environment that is, has lighting and projection mapping into the forest. And so it gets the young kids and families in general into the nature, into the forest, and experiencing a new kind of ecotourism. Feet Not Cars, which is there needs to be a car sharing program. You know, our family is a 2-car family, not because we have to be, but because every once in a while we need the second car. And so how do you help people affordable live by having the right kind of car sharing program? We have partners in telehealth. If you think about telehealth and being able to access health care, not just health care for if you have a cold, but behavioral health care and mental health care. Also, you know, the VA has an Atlas program that they're really pushing more telehealth in areas like Nevada that don't have a lot of VA hospitals nearby in the rural areas. So how do you think about health and wellness in these communities? Ag tech we mentioned. This is a big part of the project I'll talk about, been excited to talk with Trey about, which is reclamation of water and sewage so that we can retreat for irrigation standards and up to commerce irrigation for food standards. This is a mobile modular Nuterra system that can do reclamation. I think one time, the first thing I met Trey is, I can't wait for you to be a wastewater customer of ours. And so we want to be and we plan to be, but also these kind of solutions help everyone think, can you do a purple pipe system close to the site so you're not shipping it way off and coming back, but it's a good blend. So those are the kind of things that we're thinking about. So those are our goals. In the last 2 minutes, I'll just show you how does that look. So what does it look like when it all comes together? The word I've loved from the team here at the city was Allison says a lot, which is intent, which is the intent of the B3 code and what the intent was to do that. And I came out of left field with kind of some different concepts, but it was a very quick, easy sync and synergy because we both have the same intent and just how do we think about getting there. So this is how a new community would look on 400 acres. You see, we think in rings, much more in rings, not necessarily that you the rings pull everyone into the project. So if you look at the far right, that's the 969 connection. When you first enter the property, that's where it's already kind of laid out flat and open, kind of the cow range right now. That's where we're looking at putting the ag tech facility. There's also a sports complex and outdoor theater that we want to do there if you rethink how theater experiences should be during times of COVID. You know, talking with different organizations here in Bastrop Can about the opportunities for education. Potentially a school there. Had a great conversation with Terry about the YMCA and the needs the Y has potentially for a facility and some opportunity there. You'll see the north part where you see some big looking lakes. That's the eco resort area. There's a pedestrian commerce street that is that ring that circles that. The single family larger units are on the outside ring, and then the little dots are the condo units that get blended into the project, into the community. When you see the green kind of roads, those are pedestrian and fire roads that allow fire access to the community, but also allow multi-modes of transportation. So one thing is we're in the ETJ, and I'll wrap up quickly, is that the key things for the city, going through the city process with the ETJ, is infrastructure, so sewer and water approvals, drainage and how the drainage system works, detention ponds, things like that, and then the transportation grid and the roads. So those are the big things for the city sign off on, and the development agreement. We'll talk about that in a second. So as we work, this has been a great relationship from the very beginning. We started sharing early plans with the city here, showing the different options that we had, and the team has been great working through this. As we think about the grid system, we understand the intent. I don't think anybody came in thinking the developer was going to want to keep all the trees instead of just knock it out. And so as you look at the red on a plan, those are the streets. Those are what I'd call car streets, that cars go up and down. That's the extension of Blakey, the extension of 20, the connectivity that is already done for the colony up there, out to the Woodlands, down to 20 and over to 969 with Blakey. And then the blue, and you'll see on the map in a second, are all the other kind of multimodal streets, which are things like walking and bicycles and light electric vehicles. We can call them golf carts, but we'll use a different term later, light EV. And so that's how you start seeing the breakout of the transportation grid and how that works. And the main thing is keeping those away from each other, but in a way that everybody has a multimodal mode of transportation. If you look at these are kind of little housing units, just to give an example. It is very much, the B3 code was talking about, you know, the idea that alley load is the best because it gives people the better experience when they open their front door. We completely agree with that. So what you'll see is the wider green are the roads that are the private roads that go into the garages. The smaller green are the sidewalks that when you open your front door, you walk outside and you are naturally in the forest, right? So that idea when you drive into your garage and you walk out the front door, you've left, you know, kind of that the hustle and bustle behind, and you're naturally into the forest environment. And everyone can head straight down on that. You can see a little blue line next to those. That is the fire road that has the multimodal as far as you can get your bike and you can get your golf cart, or you can get your walking and walk out the door. The thing I love about this as you look at the plan, that my son who's 6 can literally walk out the front door and get on his bike and go down to that fire road and never be around a car, right? And so that creates a safe environment for the family. Those red lines are those fire roads that are his main pedestrian streets that go through the community. And as you look at that, those are very wide, very big. There's a 12-foot pedestrian path, there's 6-foot bike lanes, and there's another 12-foot electric vehicle for golf carts or for other kind of light EVs that can go through those fire roads. Again, a very safe and enjoyable environment. Those paths you see are a lot of trails that go through different areas of activations as far as the parks, the library, the kid activations that are in the forest as well. And so that's what you start to look like as you think about a new community. What we are not going for is this, okay? So as we think about building our roads and we think about those kind of things working with the city, this is not what we want, right? To me, we went through a shift of urban design we can talk about some other time, but this is like a runway about to take off. I could take off an airplane on this thing, right? And so it's nice to have a sidewalk, but I ain't gonna have my 6-year-old walk and ride his bicycle next to a runway, right? And that's what it feels like. What we are going for as we build our environments and our right-of-ways is more of this, right? And so obviously it's not exactly like that. You have to have curbs, you have to have the drainage, but the idea that you are blending into the natural environment. We have 300 acres of trees. We do not want to tear all those down and put these little fake trees in the driveway, right? So how do you blend in the environment but still create the right site triangles and safe environment for the families to go through? So that's more of what we're going through. We can talk about that later. And so that's at the end. So the key thing for us working with the city council and our thing we want to bring up is, one, just educational, telling you what we're working on, what we talked to Judge Poppy about, Mel, what we've talked to the rest of the team here at the city about, wanting to everyone kind of get up to speed on the project, why we're excited to be here. The second is we want to be a customer. Trey's been great, his team working with us on wastewater. There's one problem with wastewater. It's kind of down the street, so we got to bring it up to where we are. And so that I can speed up building of, we can have 250 units here by March, but there's somebody has to dig a hole to get the wastewater there, right? So that's the part of the project that the horizontal takes a little bit of the more time. And the second question with the city and infrastructure that we want to talk to you about is what's called a PID. I'm not sure if you guys, I know we've had a little experience that Rick here on our team and Tally on our legal side, they're the experts that we brought in on these kind of developments. And so I can let Rick answer any questions you have, but very quickly, the PID is just a form that allows us to invest that capital into the sewer, the streets, the water, all of those kind of things on the infrastructure side. And so you can see in this presentation will be shared with you the kind of facilities that the PID can fund, mainly again, which are streets and sidewalks and water and wastewater and making sure the toilets work. That allows us to be able to have the ability to not be a typical developer and try to squeeze in every little square foot we can, but maintain the forest. It allows us to create that example that we can have the property owners that they feel like they know what the pit is. It's very clear and upfront. They can pay it off if they need to. One big thing for us, we talked about at the very beginning, the city asked us like annexation because there's kind of this new law in Texas about the choice of annexation. Working through this on our side, and we had a great meeting with the county and with the city as well, which was there are probably parts of the project that make a lot of sense to annex for everyone, like the commercial area where it's sales tax revenue, there's $250 million of commercial development for property taxes. There's areas like the residential that might not make sense to annex right away because then you don't have to worry about servicing those roads and those streets and all of those kind of things, but at the same time have the sales tax revenue that comes through that, and then we're not dealing with two different tax brackets of people that live here versus somewhere else in the community. And so we can go through the project. It's about $650 million of development. $250 million of it is on the commercial side, on the city side. The other key aspects of the city for the benefits is obviously, like we talked about, to be able to provide the water, the wastewater, major connectivity with Blakey and 20 extensions, and some of those other benefits. So we can go through that later, and Rick can answer any questions. The last slide is the critical path. So I'll tell you what our critical path is and what we need your help on. Our critical path is we're ready to go. And so our contract on the property is to close on December 15th. And so we've been working on all of the stuff with the city here to make sure that we are thinking in the right direction and that we want to be here if y'all want us to be here. If y'all don't want us to be here, we don't want to intrude. And so making sure that this is a concept that the city is excited about and the community is excited about. Our goal is in Q1 to already start having our showroom here as fast as possible. That includes a single-family home, a condo unit, the grab-and-go grocery, the micro-office units, the cafes, healthcare, virtual and physical learning school example, fitness, a vertical farming unit, and other kind of a pre-sale build-out. That will be cool because y'all can walk inside, touch it, feel it, look at it, see what the experience is. If you're tall, you'll like the 10.5-foot ceilings and the 11.5-foot wide of the basic modules. And then the critical path with the city that we're already starting to work on in parallel is a development agreement. So Tally and our legal team has already been in correspondence with your legal team. Yep. Great. Great. So I think they're and y'all have worked together before, I think. So there's a working relationship there that could help on that side of it. The idea of a PID and the PID creation is another critical path. And then the site plan approvals, which are all the things like infrastructure, drainage, and wastewater. So those are the critical path products that we've been working on with everybody. There's a technicality of part of this is that we have to submit a notarized petition to have a public hearing about a PID creation and the development agreement. And so we try to keep things moving. So we have the notarized form that we'll turn into either Paul or the city attorney today, which is asking council to set a public hearing so we can have a deeper discussion about all of those things and hopefully be at a point where we can get at least the development agreement and that first part of the PID creation getting approved so we can start putting our money on the property. The last thing I'll say is if you see the property right below us, you see there's a little open area on that area. If you ask me what the biggest concern I have right now, that's the only concern I have, which is there's an RV park there, and Isabella is wonderful. The problem is that the county, when she started putting her RVs, and she's put a lot of money in infrastructure and power there, she has a really long flagpole. So she has about 40 RVs spots around this flagpole. That's where Blakey goes. And so the county told her last year when she started doing all that stuff, they said, oh, we don't think that Blakey will happen for a long time. And then she goes, next thing you know, you show up at my door. And so she's been really nice and working through us. And the second part of that property below us is owned by one of the only other licensed medical marijuana growers in the state of Texas. And so he's looking at putting an outdoor greenhouse there. And obviously you can tell from where our school and kids' facilities are, he is very concerned about the odor. We're very concerned about the odor. And so we're working with him and potentially to purchase that property for him so that he can find another location in Bastrop County. But everyone is not, my 6-year-old doesn't have to ask me where the skunk is every other day. So that's the only risk that we see right now. So I'm very sorry. I try to talk really fast, but I know that was probably way past my time. But thank you so much.
Councilmember Ennis?
What is a farm unit?
Yeah, farming units. So ag tech facilities, as I mentioned, our background is technology. There are a lot of companies that we have relationships with that are doing things like vertical growing farming. So imagine a unit, I'll show you when it gets here, that you can live in the community, and there are mainly berries and leafy greens that are grown in these indoor units that these things stack up. But you could be in your house and looking at your phone, seeing how your cabbage is growing, and push the button to water it some more if you want to, and be able to have your natural produce there. There's also some companies that are actually doing growing of meat. So you'll see Betty the cow, but you're actually not eating Betty, you're eating Betty's cells that have been grown in a barrel, but Betty's still alive. That's not saying we're gonna do that, but the ag tech facility is to spur new kinds of technology. Okay. And a lot of those people are wanting to move to Texas, and ag tech is a big opportunity here at Bastrop.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
I mean, this is all very exciting. I mean, it's like sitting through a kaleidoscope and with everything that you're providing, and
sure.
I'm having a hard time taking it all in.
Oh, I understand.
Hard time's probably not the right.
Sure.
I'm trying to take it all in.
It's a lot. Yeah, sure.
I guess I'm concerned about the accelerated process that
Sure.
that you're requesting. A great deal of effort was put into by elected officials, staff, and the community to create Building Bastrop. And it looks like we're attempting to circumvent, that's the correct word, some of the processes that were put in place. And when you move from concept to practical application, things might be all right, but then you hit the sustainability stage where it's realistic expectations. And we're talking about a new transportation program or a new transportation concept to where people don't have access, and Texans in their trucks are a pretty big deal. Mm-hmm. And we're looking at removing that aspect of it. What's to say in 10 to 15 to 20 years that such is not the case? Even in 5 years, such is not the case, and people want to have access to that POV so they can move to goods and services under their own violation, as opposed to some sort of separate modality that's in place.
That was probably not well communicated on my part. I own a big truck and a big Jeep too, and so every single family residence has a garage that fits a truck. And so you actually can drive your vehicle into the community. You can drive your vehicle onto your personal property. You can drive a vehicle into your driveway, into the garage like you normally do. What we're doing is separating where that person is driving from 20 feet away from where the kids are riding their bikes and walking on the sidewalk. Because what happens now is you're putting those things right on top of each other. So the big truck is driving 60 miles down a 40-mile-an-hour street because it looks like a runway. And then the 6-year-old's like 5 feet away on the sidewalk, right? And so everyone, we assume, will have a car, and you can have your car on the property. It's just if you look at that, the cars stay mainly on the outside loop of the property and in the homes and in the parking lots for the condos and stuff. But we don't want the cars to go into the forest because obviously you don't want the big trucks driving into the forest for a lot of reasons. So I'm sorry if I didn't explain that correctly, but all that's there.
Yeah, that makes much more sense to me.
Oh, thanks, I'm not going to get rid of my truck.
Thanks for the the clarification.
Yeah.
But I still want to address the accelerated process that we're going through here. There's a lot of legal aspects that hit this, a lot of administrative aspects that hit this. How has that been communicated to our city staff as to how best to approach that from y'all's side? I mean, and certainly the creation of a PID, I'm not real sure what research was done by your group. I'm sure that it's very good research, but our experience with the PID has not been real positive.
We've heard that. We've heard that.
The past 3 years have been somewhat of a challenge to straighten out the aspects of a poorly developed PID. And not saying that y'all would do that, because I've read that there are certain PIDs that have been very successful. It's just that we just have a bad taste in our mouths relative to it.
Totally understand that, and we're very aware of that. Rick is very aware of that as well, and so a lot of the stuff that we address in the PID, a lot of the financial materials that will come over, a lot of that kind of materials that will come over addresses some of the challenges you've had with PIDs in other communities and different tax rates. We very much thought through a lot of that stuff, so we weren't coming with hey, let's do this, but really like, here's been the past experience the way we've understood it, here's how it could, because PIDs can be bad, they can be really good, right? Because again, I got to get your sewer system from way down where it is to where I'm way up here, and there's a whole bunch of people that have to flush toilets between, right? And so there are the right aspects to use it and how to use it, but it has to be structured the right way. To your question on timing, one of the reasons that people are excited about what we do is because you can spur faster development and ability to build things in a way that is eco-sustainable, but is also very quick, right? And if you look at the country at affordable housing crisis, a lot of that is timing. It's time on construction site, it's materials, it's labor, it's weather, it's all of those kind of things that we get to avoid. So for that, I guess what we would say is, we've been communicating for the last probably 3 months with the city as far as the staff is concerned, and with the county. We're in the ETJ, obviously. And so at that time, it's not we're just walking in today and say, this is what we want to do. There's been a lot of iterations of even the site plan you see. Frankly speaking, I have to make a decision, and that decision is it's going to cost me $20 million to secure the land, secure the weed farm, start putting stuff on there really quickly. And obviously there's a risk analysis of that as well. And like I said, part of that is the nice thing with Tally and your legal team having worked together before. We've seen that when people share the same vision and want to come around the table, and I think we have shown, and I think the city has shown here, that we've had a very collaborative relationship so far. That things can get done a lot quicker than you think if everyone's sitting around the table knowing that we want to work together and let's figure out everyone's concerns and how to make that work. And so what I'll submit tonight is just legally, technically, the first thing I have to submit to start the process. But for a lot of reasons, we have this date that is there, and that we're having a hard time with as far as getting that. So to that point, all of the PID stuff is the term sheets, all of that stuff has been coming over. It's coming over now. The financial documents are coming over for everybody to review. We just knew that because the other meeting had been canceled in November and the other meeting in December, there is a short window to try to do that. So we just needed to submit this tonight so that everybody could say, hey, let's get you on the agenda somewhere. So in between now and then, get all the information we can.
I'm really impressed. I mean, anybody's impressed by Purdy packaging and what all I can. I really
Sure.
And I know that this has more substance to it than just Purdy packaging.
Right.
And it's really easy for us as policymakers to sit up and say, oh my God, let's move forward on this because we're entranced by the Purdy packaging.
Sure.
But it's going to be incumbent upon staff, and we're going to have to fall upon staff, both legal and administratively, to ascertain whether or not this is doable within the confines in which we have to work. So that's my trepidation. It's not because of the project; it's because of the timing and all of it. Certainly need to consult with staff, with Paul and his staff, as well as with legal staff, to ascertain what would be the best way for us going forward. And the sustainability issue is a huge factor for us, and being able to maintain this stuff for the next quarter century.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a key thing why we looked at some of the annexation ideas and saying what things are maintained privately by the HOA, what things are in the county, what things in the city, because we didn't want to put a huge burden on the city to maintain something that you guys don't want to maintain necessarily, right? And so that's where we try to split the baby per se of saying, well, this commercial area provides great, property tax and also sales tax, and there's a hotel side of it. The residential side don't necessarily want to maintain those streets and everything, so that could stay on the county side of things. So we've been trying, everyone's been super collaborative, and to the point with Paul and with Trey was the idea that there are things that can run in parallel to each other, right? And so legal is already running in parallel to site plans that we can start submitting from engineering to look at those, to development and agreement and PID creation potentially. So there are parallel paths that can run at the same time. But exactly to your point, your job is to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, right? And so we want to make sure that you have all that information, that you're educated about the project, happy to answer more questions at another time or anything like that as well, but totally understand your concern.
One more ask. Is there any way that we can get the presentation sent to us electronically so we can look at it in a little bit more detail?
Yes, we will.
I mean, I can go online and look, but I prefer to see your
I'll send you the whole presentation, and I think Trey might already have it, but we'll get it to you.
Outstanding. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Trey, you're saying you have it. Can you just add it to the Dropbox for us? That would be fantastic. Thank you. Councilmember Ennis?
One more question.
Sure.
On my end. This is very innovative, very exciting. Do you have any history on how the structures retain their value?
Yes, great question. So one of our parts of our project, USDA, is a partner that we've been working with on different aspects of the structures. So part of this project is being funded, there's a multifamily, what's called a 538 USDA loan with Bonneville, which is basically for middle income affordable. And so the underwriters, the legal, when you structure them to the ground, the people who finance them for 40 years are more than happy with the structural asset. Again, the builder with Perma-Saliza builds skyscrapers, and so they have 10-year warranties on the units. We have longer warranties than if you just bought a house from a normal home builder. When you look at the videos of them about being, literally there's a DOD project where there's videos of trying to saw through it, hit it with a baseball bat, all kinds of things. And so one key thing is the same people that build these massive 100-story buildings, there's a legal paranoia their lawyers have to making sure everything works right because there's a lot of risk. And so that is the same thing they bring even to these smaller structures. And so, and obviously when we started with certifications in states like California, that had to go through a lot. There's a 988-page document for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What I'm looking at is, to me, we're looking at more conceptual stuff. Do you have a like community anywhere like this?
Yeah, so the first community that we've worked with so there are multiple different kinds of modular structures of this that we have that we can show you, and in Italy and in Europe. This is very much a European, design and concept. Halliburton was the first company that we officially started working with to build a new type of community for them in Permian Basin. These units that are coming over to Bastrop are some of the units that from part of the Halliburton project. So we already started production on some of those units, and some of those units are the ones that are coming to Bastrop. So all of the testing and certification of people living them has been done in Italy. As far as what Bastrop has is this larger 400-acre is the first time that all of our partners, like I mentioned with the healthcare, the grocery, all those kind of things, are coming into one larger project, which is this 400-acre project. The Halliburton project we've been designing with them is about a 50-acre project, and so this is a much larger scale. And frankly speaking, I'll tell you why, is because Perma-Saliza, I mentioned the manufacturer, my problem is scale. Because they build things like Apple's headquarters, they can't stop production on Apple's headquarters to build like 10 little units, right? So we've had to look for corporate partners, had to look for partnerships that could produce lots of quantity. And so this is the ability that we have a lot of corporate partners coming into this project that are funding a lot of the construction and the vertical development of all of this stuff, who have been through the units, who have slept in the units, seen the units, tested the units, who have tested the units for grocery, those kind of things. And then also, so our goal, and that's one of the things I was talking to Trey about, is getting all of that list you saw here, where after you wake up from Christmas break, you come back, you're like, where did this show up from? Because I think it is an important thing for the community and the city to see it, touch it, feel it, walk in it, eat in it, sleep in it as a sleep nap. I'll call it a nap because you're going to really sleep in it until it's started, and do all of those things. Our main concern, going back to being a wastewater customer, is making sure the wastewater is going in parallel, so when people need to start flushing toilets, when people start moving in, that the toilets work, right? Because you can't have a community without toilets. And so I think, I'm excited to bring that big set of units here for you to experience and see all those as soon as you wake up from Christmas.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Jenkins, you said that there's examples in the Midland area?
The Halliburton project was the first project we designed. The units that are coming to Bastrop were the ones that were built for the Midland project. The Midland project right now, as far as that community is concerned, that one has been paused with Halliburton. Obviously, oil crisis, COVID, and all of that stuff. So we're basically taking a lot of that stuff we've done and bringing it here to Austin while we get ready to restart the project. Do
you have any pictures of it in place?
Yeah, we have pictures. Yeah, we got videos, we got pictures. We can send you.
I think that's part of what Mr. Peterson's talking about.
Yeah, totally.
If there could be an actual picture of the unit.
Oh yeah, and there's examples. I'll send you videos that show how the units are installed, how they get installed on site. We'll send you pictures of the interiors, of videos of it. Show you. We have one gentleman that we work with who's 6'7", and his number one question is, what's the ceiling height inside? And so he walked in and was like, wow, this is great, right? And so there are a lot of those kind of materials that we'll give you. But to your point, nothing suffices till you actually walk in and see it. So that's for sure. Yep.
Councilmember Ennis?
Mayor.
Just 1 second, Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember
Was
Ennis?
is the units in for Halliburton, was that a workers' camp?
No. The key thing is when you think about what the focus of a lot of the companies are corporate partners, because the other thing that we've done is we've had a lot of corporate partners come to us wanting these communities that are really looking at it for their own employees and then as a benefit to some of the other people in the community, like first responders, teachers. With Halliburton, their biggest issue was the fact that there were a lot of families that it wasn't for the man camps out in the oil field. It literally for the families and the kids and the families who are there, also the workers that are in the office building with accounting, and getting a new generation of employees who are coming into those kind of companies that are looking, obviously, you guys got Tesla coming 20 minutes away, right? So you got a huge crutch of people coming in that want a different kind of community. And so when you think about it, number one, the reason that they contracted us was because they didn't want another man camp. They wanted something that was for the kids and for the family.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes, I was just watching with amazement, trying to keep up with all this. This is a very innovative project, and I like the concept. I'm so glad that you're going to send us copies of the presentation so I can study it a little bit more. I'm a little bit concerned about the time factor that's involved, but also I was wondering, what is the capacity, or if it were to be built out as you've got illustrated here, how many units are you proposing in that draft that we saw?
Yeah, great question. And off the top of my head, I'll send you the document so you can read it. But it's around 1,000 single-family units, what we call single-family. It's around 500 detached condo units, the multifamily units. There's also another kind of 200 attached units that are multifamily condo units. There's around a 200-room eco-resort. There's over 300,000 square feet of commercial space, which is the food and beverage, the ag tech facility, potential for the school, the potential for the charter school, potentially. There's a large amount. So one key thing to that is that it's not and this is why EDC is excited about it as well, we're not looking at building 50 and then saying, okay, like the first shipment of units that get installed, we're talking about like hundreds, right? And so it's not going to be one of those things that it's like, well, hey, let's put 20 there, and then a year from now we'll put another 20. And no, we've got the capital and we're ready to go. We think this is the right community to be in, and we want to be a part of the community. And so we're making our bet on those 2 deer you saw earlier and those trees. And so it's a large-scale project, both from a commercial aspect, multifamily aspect, single-family, and ecotourism.
Right, it's very unique, and I mean, I like the concept. I like what I've seen. As I said, the time frame, the time factor that you were discussing concerns me a little bit, but I'm sure you'll work that out with staff and with all the different things that are coming through. But it's interesting. I'm just glad that you chose Bastrop to try this with, and you say that there are some other communities that have this. I heard you say something about one was put on pause, but are there other units or other communities that have this, or are we the guinea pig?
Yeah, good question. So there are multiple other projects that we're working on right now in multiple other areas. So some of them are strictly medical for COVID. Some of them are strictly retail. Some of them are living in some of the communities like up in Reno and like I mentioned in some of the other projects we're working on. So there are multiple projects going on in parallel to each other. Like I mentioned, the units that we'll send here, that's a batch of some units, that there are other units going other places. But our goal, and the reason from a timing standpoint to your timing, is my personal feeling, no other sense that I'm also a Texan, is this is the right place to do the first large-scale deployment of the units. Now, I will tell you that we wouldn't just build it and have this wish of if we build it, they will come. We've already have demand for the units from some of our partners and things, and so we are confident that those units will be full when they get here. So we're not concerned about the economic part of it from our concern. We're willing to take that financial risk. Our biggest challenge right now is the roughly $20 million it's going to take for us to make that first bet, which is the land acquisition, the other acquisition of those other properties we talked about, getting the first large scale here, and then start funding a lot of the infrastructure needs. So to your point, I think it's an awesome story that we'll be able to tell together. We have a lot of people from other cities that will obviously be coming here to Bastrop. to see how, and they will ask the question that all y'all are asking, which is, how in the world did we pull that off like that fast? But yeah, that's I appreciate the question, and that's, we're excited to be a part of the community if you'd have us.
Right, and the natural setting is just really wonderful because of the nature aspect of it and everything, and being a parks person, I mean, I like the fact it's with the deer and all of that and all the other natural aspects is kind of appealing to me.
Yes, sir. I think that the key thing for me is when I grew up, I could walk out my backyard and there was the woods that I felt like I was on an adventure, but it was safe. My son doesn't have that experience, right? He walks out to a parking lot or to a there's just not that same experience, right? And so we think there's a jewel that you have in your ETJ of 410 acres of virgin forest that, just frankly speaking, the owner had other offers that were higher than ours, and we came in at full asking price. But obviously, when Tesla came here about a couple weeks after we started working with him, there was a lot of other offers that came in a lot higher from regular residential developers that just want to start building a lot of homes. And to give credit to David and the current owner, he said, I want you. Even if I don't make as much money, I've lived here for 30 years. What your vision is who I want to sell it to. And so we are very respectful of him, and this is, we're excited to be a part of working with the property.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Jenkins, one of the reasons that you're on for the work session briefing, because council, we are not voting on anything this evening, but I believe part of what he was trying to get a feel for is if there was an interest from council, because if we were going to say, are you kidding me, then it's time to stop.
Yeah.
So I think what you've heard from council is that I'll use Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. They're awfully pretty pictures, and
sure.
it all sounds really great, but the devil's in the details.
Right.
So, council, I believe what I hear us all saying is we don't have major problems with the concept. We appreciate you complying with the grid system of the transportation. Yes, we are very interested in selling wastewater. We are building a plant and would happy to have wastewater customers. But it's really important, council, I believe at this point, Mr. Jenkins and his team just need to work with our city manager and our city attorney, and because you guys have a great team that's looking out for you, and we also have to be looking out from our perspective.
Yes, ma'am.
And you and I've had some pretty blunt conversations
I like
about
those.
that.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
and what we don't want is to have 10, 15 years from now someone saying, Councilmember Ennis, Mayor Schrader, what were you thinking and what did you get us in?
Exactly.
And I know that's not what you want either. But
that's right. That's right.
So, council, are you comfortable with giving the direction to continue to work with both the city manager and the city attorney? I'm unclear. I do want to back up Mayor Pro Tem Nelson's concern about some of the timing, and I want to make sure we have realistic expectations. In some of the materials that we had to read, it seems like December 15th is a really, really big date. And we're only having one other council meeting.
Yeah.
And honestly, we don't have the second meeting in December because that's generally Christmas week.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
We don't want to prevent you from moving forward, but we're also at the, we're not really willing to meet every night between now and then because that's what y'all are looking for.
No,
so we've
totally
got to
understand
have
that.
realistic expectations.
Yeah. So with that, I think we've had again a great working relationship with the city so far and with the staff. And so I think to the point about being on parallel tracks, which is the legal team on the development agreement, we've already turned over the draft. We'll get comments back from your team on those. So making sure that we're being responsive. It's Rick's birthday tonight and he's here. So we'll respond very quickly to any concerns or questions that we have. So working on that development agreement is going on in parallel at the same time. And so, the wheels will keep turning, to your point. I think our biggest technicality part of that, given the difference of not another one in November, not another one in December, is we just would like to get on the agenda again this year. And so it goes back to that question about the next December 8th meeting. And so when we submit this to you guys tonight, which is this official I'm not the lawyer, but this official request to have a public hearing, that's what we would just like to submit tonight. So that's just our technicality of saying, hey, we need to submit this. And then along with that, they have started submitting all the legal documents, all the financial documents will be coming over, and we'll continue to work with staff on all of those things.
Well, it's really easy as an elected official that, and happy birthday, Rick, the folks sitting up here make, what do you guys make, $75 a month? So, you know, it's easy for us to say, yeah, ready, go.
Yeah.
It turns out that our staff, they have a full-time job.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we just need to be respectful of that. So
yes, ma'am.
Is the goal that you're hoping that we can find ourselves in a position to have a hearing on December 8th?
Our goal would be that the development agreement is in a good place, that legal has the next month to continue to work on the development agreement together and with the city staff, and the development agreement in a place where we could get the development agreement approved, right? And so that way we can say, hey, Jonathan, if I need to spend $20 million on this property, the development agreement's been approved so that we know that we can move forward with doing the infrastructure and the kind of things that we need on the site to make this work, right? That's honestly speaking, that's what we'd be looking for. And that's why I think the first draft of the development agreement, and I think we saw this in the meeting we had with the county, one thing that I try to pride myself on is listening to what everyone's concerns are, and whatever I turn in has addressed a lot of those concerns up front. So we do think there's a lot of work to be done, back and forth coordinating on the development agreement, and we'll be completely responsive, and I know your team has been incredibly responsive for us. So I'm not up here saying, oh, no one's responding. They're awesome. Everybody's been doing great. So it's just, we want to keep that ball moving.
I know that we're not in a, I don't want to make a commitment
No, I understand that.
for staff.
Yeah, I
So
understand
we
that.
encourage
Yeah,
you
yeah,
to
yeah.
work with staff and with
Yeah.
our legal team, and council will be prepared to hear what we've got ready on December 8th. Is that a good summary? City manager, is there any other items we need to cover, or?
Thank you, Mayor. It's real quickly, so
Sure.
you're looking for a next meeting, a next opportunity for council to move this process along on December the 8th?
Yes, sir.
Just to be
Yeah,
clear.
Just to be clear. Because from our situation, from a legal and financial situation, and the property owner having multiple backup offers that are multi-million dollars more than
Sure.
our offer, and I got this marijuana farm that I don't want to be there, that he has a tech stop permit to start building a driveway, I'm going to have to pay him like 3x more than he paid 18 months ago to move, that there's certain risk there that, to your point, like, I very much appreciate, and I humbly ask that, I know this is a very accelerated timeline for the development agreement process with lawyer, but this is the external parts on myself with the property owner that has the trees, with the marijuana farm that are causing the pressure.
Just for the point of making this clear in the public setting, the public hearing is a requirement to accomplish what? What is driving the need for a public hearing?
Sure. So to part of the development agreement is a PID term sheet and a PID creation part.
Right.
And so with that comes over all the PID financial documentation that will be coming to you this week from Rick. So all of that financial documentation, all the stuff working on that with Rick's team and Tally's team. So all that will be coming your way. So over the next month, you guys have time to go through all of that. But for that, we have to submit this document, which basically says we're requesting a public hearing, and it just so happens that because of the development agreement, those two things can be heard in one setting instead of having multiple different meetings on different times for different things.
And again, I listened carefully and
Sure.
may not have caught this, and I know you and Mr. Job have had some fruitful discussion about how this might work in parallel, to quote what you were saying earlier. On December 8th, you're going to be asking council to consider to hold a public hearing, approve a development agreement, and approve the creation of a public improvement district?
Let me put it this way. What we would want, first step, is that we continue the great working relationship we've had with you.
Certainly.
And with the rest of the team here.
Thank you for that.
That you feel like that, hey, we have done all of our due diligence and research, and that I would never ask something to go to council that Paul said, hey, it's not ready to go to council, right? And so that's the first step, is making sure.
No one wants that to happen.
Yeah, no. So our first step is working with you and with staff to make sure that you guys feel comfortable and confident in everything that's been done and provided and legal, so that when you go to council, but and here's the deal, right? If for some reason we're not at that level, then obviously we come before council and say, hey, this is the progress we made, you know,
Okay.
But this is where we're at.
I appreciate that clarity, and council,
Yeah.
I appreciate your really good questions. We will continue to pursue that collaborative relationship that Mr. Jenkins, and appreciate the way you framed all that, the way he described it. This is a significant request, just to be
Sure.
frank. I do think you've done a good job of listening and responding to the input you've received from a whole lot of camps so far.
Sure.
And it's really not so much the development agreement, it's the creation of the PID.
I see.
That's going to require a lot of detailed analysis. Council
Sure.
will probably want to bring in a consultant to help us with this. This won't happen overnight. And just to manage expectations a little bit, I think council and the public can expect that we'll work hard to get all this done. But
Yes,
this is pretty significant.
No,
and
it's-
I appreciate how you just framed it at the end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that was-
thank you for that.
yeah.
And thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Hang on here.
Okay, no problem.
I was doing some upper level math.
No problem.
So council meets in 4 weeks and we have Thanksgiving and it's 8:15 on Tuesday night and
Right.
that's for one of the days.
Sure,
So I think we can make some progress, but I don't ever want it to be, but y'all said you thought it was
No,
a
no, I
great
understand
idea.
that.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
completely
yeah.
different than
No,
reviewing and creating an entire PID.
Totally understand. And part of the thing that we've been, had the working relationship, and part of the thing that from the legal side is just making sure that like the communication has been very good so far and keeping that up. So from the legal team of saying, hey, our first comments will come over, you know, because if the first comments don't come over for 4 weeks, then obviously we can't get there, right? But everyone's been great and responsive and working together, and Tally and your legal team has worked together before, so there's already been a working relationship there. So I think the key thing is to keep the ball moving.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
All right, council, any other comments? Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Jenkins.
Thank you
you
guys
to
so
your
much.
team.
Thank
We're
you so
look
much.
forward to getting the presentation so we can
For
spend
sure.
some more time mulling over
For
it.
sure. I'm going to take Rick to birthday dinner. So.
There you go. Y'all enjoy your evening. Council, it's 8:15 and we are going to take a bio break. 8:15 and we're in recess. All right, let me see. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. It is 8:26 and we are back in regular session. Council, we are a little ways down on page 2. We're on staff and board reports. We are on item 6A, receive an update on all City of Bastrop active, pending, and future grants. Mr. Job.
You can tell everybody was taller than me before, so let me just pull that down. Can everybody hear me okay? So I just want to give you a quick update on where we're at. I know we come up here a lot and we say hazardous mitigation grant, and you think, man, how many times are you going to talk about this one grant? Well, it's actually several hazardous mitigation programs for different state organizations, and I explained that a little bit in the staff report, but I'll go through and give you the update with the PowerPoint. So to date, grant funded, what we've done in the last fiscal year is a little over $2 million, and we've matched $649,000. What we're talking about for pending award is that hazardous mitigation grant that we've come and gotten approved. We updated the plan. We're actually going to submit for almost $40 million worth of grant funding. What's significant about that is you look at the amount, it's a 1% match versus the average 25%. So this is, if we have the opportunity to spend a little under $1 million and get $40 million worth of worth, I mean, that'll be a huge success for the city, and I'll tell you about those. We'll also have some stuff that we'll talk about what we submit annually, right? So the emergency management grants, things like that, help pay for the salaries of our police chief, fire chief, and some of their equipment. So the downtown River Loop, you can see, I won't go through every one, and I'm sure you all looked at your PowerPoint. And if you have lots of questions, feel free to ask. But I wanted to point out what they're from, the agency they're from, and then where we're at. So again, we've just completed that Gills Branch project, the Pine Street project, the Public Works Improvement Bond. This was all stuff we've been talking about since 2016, right? So it's pretty exciting stuff. Those are wrapping up. The North Main was wrapped up. And now the River Loop, and Mia is here, which is the engineer on the project. I believe we will see it let or go to bid and maybe awarded in April, something like that, close to there.
So when you say that the status is 100%, are we saying all those projects are signed, sealed, delivered, 100%
They are
done?
signed, sealed, delivered, and we are waiting on the last reimbursement. We've submitted for the last set of monies to come to us. So all of those projects have been completed to date. We've been working, those are all the ones you saw in your budget book for the last 3 years. And except for the River Loop, which has not been completed, and it's under TxDOT review. Those guys got lots of rules, and they like to review things 3 or 4 times. Not that we don't, but.
I was going to say, just move on, Mr. Joe.
We won't touch that. But just to give everybody another a picture of what the River Loop looks like, so you can familiarize yourself with it. In the green area is actually going to be some of the pieces that are done by TxDOT while they're doing the work on the overpass. The white is actually something that we received from Keep Bastrop County Beautiful, and it was a governor's award for the state of Texas. So that will fund that white piece. And then the yellow is what's existing. So as you can see, it's going to make a loop. And the Main Street piece is actually funded through the EDC. So lots of cool stuff. And some of those are grants as well. Anything over the grant amount is actually funded by the EDC. This is just a quick picture of that Gills Branch drainage channel, 2016. Lots of the concrete broke and fell apart. We've come in and fixed it, repaired it. You can see it's much nicer. We'll see additional improvements as we go through for this next set of improvements in Gills Branch. This is the Pine Street. You can all drive down there and take a look and see what's done. Just some quick pictures. Again, the detention pond. This was a huge improvement in 2015-16 flood area. There was actually 28 houses when that detention pond spilled over and flooded a few places in the area. This is huge to protect the north end of town. And actually the 70 acres in the Piney Ridge subdivision actually trains into that. So interesting stuff.
I know this isn't in the grant discussion, but I'm mayor, so I get to ask these kind of questions. That pond is big enough? Is that in our parks? Are we talking about something we can do besides waiting for it to be used when it rains? And if not, I think that's something we ought to look at.
Yeah, I think it has an opportunity to be soccer fields or something of that nature. You can just see some of the outfall structure that was built. Now all the nice grass is growing, something the guys are getting ready to start mowing. Jasper and Newton, this was also one, there was some significant flooding on, it's called the Jasper Newton project. The majority of the improvements were done on Jasper, an unopened piece of right-of-way, but it was to help the folks that live on Newton Street. There's also some TxDOT improvements for an additional pipe under the railroad track along the Newton Street right-of-way, and that'll be part of this overpass project as well. Here's just some nice pictures. We wanted to give you an update real quick on the CARES funding. As you can see, we're going to end up using all of those total requested funds. Some of the improvements we've done, like the plexiglass you've got sitting next to you, some improvements at the library, the grant money we're going to reimburse to BEDC. We're actually going to use up all of that eligible funding of the $506,000. So good stuff.
Quick question, Trey.
Yes, sir.
The personnel costs that were mentioned there, that's for staff to maintain working through the
That's correct, and some of it is actually, and I talked to Ms. Waldron about that today, so I'm glad you asked that question. We actually were able to people that were out on sick leave due to COVID. So that is actually another reimbursable. So that's great. We didn't think we were eligible for that originally.
That's right.
We had some conversations, now we are, and that's why we went up to the maximum.
There's been some
amount.
recent rulings on what we're
Yeah.
allowed to spend
That's
CARES
where I
Act
was going.
money
I
on.
wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
no,
that
it's
we
great
were-
stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, these are just some of the updates on what you see. These are some of the smaller grants. The fire protection, we've talked about that. You guys just approved this last fiscal year, the crime scene lighting, all good stuff. All staff working together to make sure that we have something and find any savings we can, be as fiscally responsible as possible. This list is a pretty good list, and it's to everybody's, they've done a great job. So what we've submitted for, you're familiar with, we approved this, was a revitalization of Water Street. We've talked about the SAFER grant, right? We want a couple extra firefighters. We haven't heard back yet as to date that want to understand. The Emergency Management Performance Grant, that's the annual grant I was talking about, and it's to be determined. We meet that every January. You'll see that on a future council agenda that Chief Nagy will put on. He'll submit that grant, and then it comes in sometime in the summer to mid-year. So they have a pot of money, and they distribute it to all the applicants, and you're really not sure exactly how much you're going to get until how many people applied. So that's what we're waiting on. These hazardous mitigation grants, that's the big money we talked about, the $39 million. We've talked about this before when we updated the plan, but it's the Gills Branch, the West Side Fire Station, adding an additional fire station on the west side, which is a great idea. Some riverbank stabilization, and then the completion of Agnes. I just talked to Mr. Morales yesterday. We're at a 75% set of plans on this. There's a little bit more environmental work you'll see us come back and talk about.
When you say this, that's the Gills Branch?
Sorry, yes, this is the Gills. I look at this so much, I forget that not everybody's familiar with it. But yes, this is the Gills Branch project. And it actually takes about 200 structures out of the floodplain, right? So once this is completed, if funded through this grant, you've just taken 200 houses out of the floodplain. And what we're at is a 75% set of plans. So I'm reviewing those. Our contracted engineer, Mr. Bonadono, is reviewing it. And it's looking good. As you can see, we took away all that flood area, and you can see the improvements in yellow. Some of the cuts we'll have to make. We actually went through a lot of detail yesterday. It was a great meeting. This is the Agnes Street gap completion. And if you'll remember when we talked about this originally, I think I had 6 different grants that we were going to submit for, but our helpful folks at Langford scored them previously and realized what would do well and what would not do well. So these are actually grants that have a great potential to be funded. I think the Gills Branch is probably the most. It scored the best, but we're actually expecting this one to score well as well, and that's the Agnes completion. This is also a great project. The numbers turned out really well. And you can see this is some bank stabilization. Anybody that goes down to Fisherman's Park, you can see where there's pieces of bank that are missing. You can see where we have new bank, right? And a lot of that comes from Bob Bryant or when there's a large flood. We just want to stabilize that bank, make some improvements, do some plantings, also include some nice riprap. And that's the plan. That's about a $10 million project. And that has been submitted as well.
Trey, excuse me for interrupting, the stabilization project, this is the first time we've seen any of these maps. There's no preliminary engineering on this, right?
There is preliminary engineering on this. We've done enough to submit for the grants, right? So they sign a contract with, it's some of our engineers. This is if you're familiar, you remember Brian, right?
Okay.
So he's actually the engineer on this project, him and Jenny LaFoy. And we did talk about these when we updated the plan, and you would have seen these exhibits then. But you're right, there's been very minor preliminary engineering to get these just to submittal level.
Okay.
Right?
So you have
Cost
everything you
projection.
need to submit?
They were submitted October 25th.
Okay, all right, that's right. Okay,
Yes.
thank you, thank
And
you.
they agree to carry that cost for a while until we get funded or not. So that's how that works.
Nice.
One other question on stabilization, Trey.
Sure.
Why is LCRA not involved in that process?
LCRA doesn't manage the river this far down necessarily. They really maintain most of the things in the dam structure and more north. They do have some environmental testing and things that they do, but they're not the regulatory authority on this lower Colorado. They are in some aspects, but this is more of the Corps of Engineers.
And we've asked that question directly of
Okay,
LCRA.
all right, so it's
Yeah.
already been asked. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And now sometimes they have grant funding for things like this and improvements, and we're certainly willing to ask them for money too. This is just a very basic floor plan of what we could look like for the West Side Fire Station. We've had some input from the chief, again, very base level engineering, and we've put in for land acquisition the whole shebang. So we're hoping this will work out for us, and this will land somewhere west of the river.
Okay, so just one of those little details, because I didn't know where the picture had come from. Your grant summary calls it West Side Fire Station number 3, and your slide calls it Fire Station number 1. And so I was trying to figure out, where's Chestnut? And then I realized, no, this is just a placeholder kind of slide,
This is
right?
just a placeholder. That's
Okay.
exactly right. This is just something something for you to look at.
But for the public to know that we're well aware of the fact that we need a fire station on the west side of the river.
Correct. And that's all of those fire safety improvements. One includes this. This is something that's been in the plan for a while. But the Agnes Street connection, so we have a good east-west connection during evacuation periods or something like that. And that's really our narrative that we're selling, and I think we have a good chance.
Excellent.
Again, just a summary of the grants that we just submitted for. It's around $39 million, and the applications were submitted on October 25th. We expect to hear something January, February this year, which is a great time because we're going to talk about some capital improvements anyway. That's also when we'll wrap up the Gills Branch plans. So get ready for lots of workshops, probably January, February, but enjoy that Christmas break, and then we're going to get back to work.
That's right.
So with that, I'll take any questions.
Council? Good job. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Job. All right, moving on to item 6B, receive presentation for the strategic planning calendar for fiscal year 2021-2022. Ms. Waldron is making her way to the mic.
Good evening. So as you know, in years past, this calendar is very helpful for us to get through this lengthy and complicated process of. So I just wanted to go over the pieces and answer any questions that you have. So we do kind of divide the calendar up into sections: preparation, adoption, and implementation. This calendar has been prepared with the assumption that we would not need an election, because those dates would most definitely change if we were to make that assumption. So I wanted to make that clear up front. The preparation section, most of the dates have a lot to do with gathering data, preparing data, meeting and getting information from staff, from council. But I have highlighted a few important council dates on here. May 11th, you will receive the capital plan and the fiscal forecast before we have the May 14th planning workshop, so that you have that in your hand and can review that before we get to that workshop. And then it also covers deadlines for our organizations that are requesting funding. On the adoption side of it, we've taken all this information during the preparation stage, and now we're going to be calculating and doing public notices and have items on particular city council meetings. And then on September 28th, we will be adopting the tax rate and the budget. And then there's the implementation stage. There's a lot more to the implementation. It goes on for a year, but these are the highlights. You'll get your book. We continue giving you the performance reports. We have an audit, and if you have any questions for me.
Council, you'll note that she's done a great job with the asterisks are council meetings, and those were regular council meetings,
Right.
with the exception of some
We
of
have
the budget
one special,
workshops.
we always have to have that one special meeting because the timing of the law requires it.
Right. Any questions, Councilmember Ennis?
I'd like to compliment you, Ms. Waldron, for this is such a monumental task with all the constraints you
Legal.
have put on you to make sure each date is right and it all interfaces together. Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Excellent. Thank you very,
That's
oh,
it.
sorry, were you done?
Nope, I'm done.
Well, no, if you had an extra slide, did you?
No, we covered it.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Moving on to item 6C, presentation of city manager's proposed reorganization plan. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor. So in your packet includes a memorandum from me that provides a narrative explanation of what it is we're trying to accomplish with the, thank you, Trey. Yeah. And I'll show you some slides that present it in more of a organization chart kind of format. Council, you've all probably heard me say in the 3 months I've been here that I feel really fortunate to have inherited a really good team of really good people who know their jobs and are dedicated to public service. In fact, I think I've said it so much that a few people have suggested that perhaps I say it too much and that it might be losing some credibility. And so with that, I promise I'll stop saying it. And tonight will be the last time I provide some emphasis on it. But I do emphasize it because I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea as to why I'm attempting to restructure things. We talked about the need to knock some of the fuzz off of how we're currently organized during the budget process. I certainly understand why prior city managers attempted to solve some of the issues I'm trying to solve here the way they do. I did attempt to take my time with this and make sure I'm considering all the factors the way I should. The factors include what I understand City Council's priorities to be. Factors include the strengths that I perceive exist within the existing team and what individual strengths have. And another really important factor is how the city organization does and should relate to the community. Bastrop is no different from a lot of other Texas cities in a lot of ways, with one notable exception. There are a lot of people and a lot of groups filled with, again, talented and well-intentioned people who do really good work that are, along with the city of Bastrop, are involved in providing services and public services to the community. And many of those groups avail themselves of a funding assistance that is approved annually by the Bastrop City Council. And I do believe it behooves the city of Bastrop to do a good job of and create some structure around how we relate to all of those groups. And hopefully that objective comes clear to you as we go through this. And so I'll start with the city manager's area of responsibilities. A highlight of this organizational change that I'm suggesting is that I am recreating the idea of 2 assistant city managers. I will say up front that a few months ago, if you would have asked me if I thought the Bastrop city organization needed 2 assistant city managers, I would have said no. But again, you've heard me say, and you guys have been here longer than I have, and you probably already know this, there is a tremendous amount of moving parts in Bastrop and a lot of organizations and people that we need to relate to in a positive way and do a better job of taking advantage, if you will, of what they bring to the table. Those 2 assistant city managers will be Trey Job, that's no surprise, and also Rebecca Gleason, who for a while now has been asked by both Trey before me and the city manager before me to take on more responsibilities than just the Main Street program, which is what her title has been and her primary function has been. And I want to say up front, because I anticipate that when people hear this part of the message, they will react with a concern that we're watering Rebecca's focus down and we're diluting her focus on the very important work of the Main Street program and and managing the historic district. It is my opinion that what I'm doing is the exact opposite of that. What I am intending to do is actually elevate that role and provide resources around it so that, again, we can do a better job of managing everything, all of those moving parts that center around what I'm convinced is the soul of the community, and that's Main Street and the historic district. So city manager will be responsible for those 2 assistant city managers, and the rest of my direct reports will include those administration and public safety functions as shown on that chart. So the city secretary, Ann Franklin, will continue to report to me in this arrangement. We are making some changes within Ann's scope of work as well. I am suggesting that we revisit the idea that was put in place before to create a position. Oh, and by the way, let me also say just generally, we're doing all of this without adding any new positions. There's no new FTEs being added to make this happen. And we're doing all of this within the existing budget. So that's, I think, important. And we intentionally approached all of this with that restraint. We are reclassifying some positions, but we're staying within that same body count. So city secretary position, we're going to revisit the idea of creating a second in command for Ann, create some succession planning opportunity in that department. We have started the work to create a job description that would make that work. The person who fills that role is likely not a person who works for the city of Bastrop today, but I actually don't know that for certain. But I also want to say, as a general rule, we have a home for everybody who is currently a permanent employee, a permanent full-time employee for the city of Bastrop. And I'll say a little bit more about that as we go. No real changes to the police department, no real changes with fire or finance. I'll tag along with what you just heard from Ms. Waldron about the strategic planning calendar for next year and how important that May 11th and May 14th date are. We have a whole lot of work to do. Tracy has a whole lot of work to do to make sure we're adequately prepared to walk council through a fiscal forecast and a capital plan, fiscal forecast that addresses a 5-year look at our major operating funds. There's a lot of work to be done there, and indirectly I am shifting some administrative burden away from Tracy and putting it on other elements of the city organization. Again, trying to match up where things need to be matched up. Tracy does a tremendous job and manages just a whole lot of stuff. This is relatively and comparatively a small finance department with no small jobs, with all of those funds we have to manage. And I'm trying to streamline that work through all of this as well. And no real changes in the human resources department, but similarly to the workload that Tracy has in front of her over the next several months, Tanya Contrell, the work that needs to be done to help the consultant and make sure the consultant that we've selected to update our compensation plan, our salary plan. We are going through a very comprehensive review of all of our job descriptions. Every city employee in the organization is involved in that process. I give credit to Tanya for how she has pushed that out through the organization, and all the department directors have helped as well. So council, this is me just letting you know that that's going to be a significant work effort over the next few months, and we're looking forward to hopefully by that spring retreat give council some really good data about where we stand with our benefits package and our salary packages throughout the organization. So for each of these realms, the city manager's realm and the 2 assistant city managers, I'm going to quickly go over these categories. It is really important that we manage relationships well. I have come to learn that it's critically important that we treat that as a job, we make that an assignment, and that there are people in the organization who, as part of their job, is to make sure some relationships are managed well and that we're communicating the way we ought to be. It is my privilege to manage that relationship with the City Council. I'll also take on the relationship with the EDC and the Chamber of Commerce, and we have periodic meetings set up to help make that happen. We are focused on the City Council's focus areas, not just the 3 priority ones that Council has communicated to me, although that is at the heart of all this, but all 9 of them. And Council, part of what we're doing, and this fits under the fiscal responsibility priority and the organizational excellence priority, and another important part of Tracy Waldron's work over the next several weeks and months is a new approach to the quarterly reports that Council sees 4 times a year. We need to do a better job of reporting progress on capital projects in at least a quarterly way. And we will also be presenting good data to you, and we'll get better at this as we go, on each of your 9 City Council focus areas. On May 14th, we look forward to Council spending some quality time with those 9 focus areas and giving us the benefit of your feedback of how you think that's all going. That'll be your opportunity to refocus on those focus areas if that's what you would like to do, change, add to those focus areas, but more importantly, let me know and let the team know what it is you want to know about how we're accomplishing each of those. And we'll again, we're starting that process now to build good information for those first reports, but that'll get better as we receive your feedback as we go. We also want to be clear on who has what kind of responsibility from a board liaison standpoint. And in this realm, we've got the cemetery board, the council-appointed ethics group, the cultural arts master plan working group that Mr. Ennis spoke about earlier today, and the Hunters Crossing PID. And Council, you already know about our cross-functional teams, and 2 of them are the administrative team that's led by Ann and the safety team that's led by Tanya, and good progress is being made on all those fronts. So that's the city manager's area. The assistant city manager that I'll talk about next is Mr. Job, community development. A lot of this is the same, but there's an important difference. Council, you'll recall that when I presented the proposed FY21 budget to you, I suggested, and you took me up on the suggestion, that we could keep the planning director position vacant for 6 months, and that is how we budgeted. I am now suggesting that we not fill that position, that we take the planning director position and reclassify it to a city engineer, and that's the second box from the left, and that we ask the newly hired city engineer to take over responsibility for developing the multi-year capital plan and make sure that matches up with the comprehensive plan and council focus areas. There's actually quite a bit of work that needs to be done before we have that updated plan put together. And then also importantly, once projects are funded and they're in the preliminary design or construction phase, I'll want that newly hired city engineer to oversee the project management for all those projects. Mr. Pallady, who now reports directly to Trey and is our very effective construction manager, would report to the city engineer in this capacity. The city engineer in this capacity will also be responsible for some plan review. This will amend our relationship with the current contracted city engineer. It won't eliminate that relationship, but it will reduce the scope, and appropriately so. And I think a real benefit of what I'm suggesting here is just how much of a load that will take off of Trey's plate. This is a significant part of what Trey does and thinks about. I want him to continue to think about it. But what I tell Trey is that we need to pull all of this great data out of his head and actually record it and report on it accordingly. And that'll be the city engineer's responsibility. Again, overseen and supervised very expertly by Trey. And I'm asking Trey here to wear two hats. I'll get in a bit. I'm going to ask Rebecca to wear two hats as well. Trey will be the Assistant City Manager of Community Development, but at least for a season, he will also serve as the Director of the Planning Department. No one on the planet understands the B3 codes and can articulate and explain them and apply them and understand the inherent flexibility that's within the codes like Trey does, and we're going to take advantage of that. Trey will be leading a really good team. I know we've got some public relations work to convince some folks in the community that's good at team as it is, but I'm not easily fooled, and there is a customer service ethic there. We are making some improvements in how we approach customer service. The MyGov implementation, as we get better at that and people get more used to it, will have dividends. But that team of Jennifer, Allison, and Vivi, and now Deborah, they know what they're doing, and they actually do treat the customer very well. I've witnessed that, and that'll just get better. The Public Works Department remains as is, and BP&L remains as is. I'm not nearly courageous enough to mess with those guys just yet, nor is there a need. They do a really good job, and so the relationships there are include LCRA.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
City Manager.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, may I interrupt just for a second before you leave the first one?
Sure.
Can you back up the slide?
I think I can. Here?
Okay, with Public Works, which includes parks still, I'm assuming.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we say Public Works and parks? I mean, so that at least it will appear to have a parks department in that sense, instead of just Public Works.
So you're suggesting that we add that to the name of the department?
Yes, because I think that's the way we've referred to it in the past.
Oh, I'm not familiar that that's the way we referred to it in the past, but I don't have a problem with what you're suggesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So here the council focus areas are, man, that is so hard to read. I know we need to get better at that. Economic vitality, and the key there is, and when you read the detail behind what council intended when you created that focus area, is there's a strategic relationship between how we manage our capital projects and how we plan capital projects with economic vitality. Managed growth, multimodal mobility, organizational excellence, and unique environment are kind of obvious. The boards here are significant and important: Planning and Zoning, Board of Adjustments, Historic Landmark Commission, Construction Standards, and as Mr. Jackson just mentioned, the Parks Department. And cross-functional team is the DRC, the Development Review Committee. We have made some adjustments to how the DRC works too. I think Jennifer understands that really well. The DRC, in my assessment, shouldn't be making any final decisions, even administrative decisions. And there are some code provisions in the procedures manual that covers the B3 codes that council at some point in the future I'll ask you to clean up. I'm a believer in administrative approvals, But the people who need to be accountable for that are singular, and that's going to be Jennifer and that's going to be Trey. You don't distribute that accountability to a team in my assessment. So we'll make that adjustment as we go. And so then I'll talk about the third realm, and that's the assistant city manager over community engagement. And as I said earlier, that will be led by Rebecca. And council, I'll pause here and say, when I'm going to ask you a favor, when people ask you about the city manager's reorganization plan, you could describe it as, okay, well, we've got a new city manager, and of course he wants to organize the deck chairs a little differently, and so this is what happened there. You could say that and leave it there, but what I hope you will say, and I hope this is the message that goes out, this is more than just reorganizing the bureaucratic boxes. What I'm really trying to accomplish here is make those connections in the community and put the city of Bastrop city organization in a structured position where we can facilitate that kind of collaborative thinking with all of the partners that we do business with that have something to do with Main Street and the historic district, and has something to do with events and events planning. And I think that's where the low-hanging fruit is. I've had some great conversations with Susan Smith of Visit Bastrop about the idea here. We have relationships, singular relationships with a lot of groups that spend hotel motel dollars, the groups that put special events together. And again, these are all folks who are well-intentioned and do great work for the community. And I believe they all have a sincere collaborative spirit. What would help is some structure around what that collaboration looks like, and the city of Bastrop pointing to people and saying, your job includes making sure those collaborative relationships actually work, so that we are empowered then to do things like put packages together that are attractive to our local hotels. And when I say local hotels, I don't just mean the Hyatt. In some ways, we've put a lot of our eggs in that Hyatt basket over the last few years, and I fully understand that, and I'm not suggesting we change that. I am suggesting that when we think about it and when we structure around it, we need to be in continued and constant conversation with the non-Hyatt hotels and learning things about where their visitors come from, where they have capacity in room availability, and match up what we're doing downtown, match up what's happening at the Opera House and the museum and the art center, and with our wonderful local events with where we have that capacity. It's, at the end of the day, it's not fair to go to one of our community assets and say, gee, you need to do a better job as a singular entity of promoting overnight stays, when what's more effective is making sure there's opportunity for planning and collaboration. And I know I've only been here a few months, but no one in Bastrop is fulfilling that role. And that's what I'm hoping to accomplish here. So Kathy Danielson's role changes here. And this organization chart doesn't have a convention center department. We still have a convention center. We still love the convention center. We still need to manage the convention center. What we need to do at the convention center is find its niche. We need to make a priority out of filling the convention center with uses that involve overnight stays. We absolutely need to do that. And we need to make it, what we need to do is find that niche for the convention center, where it fits in with everything else everything else I'm talking about. Stop complaining how the convention center is not the Hyatt. Stop complaining about the kitchen at the convention center, but treat it as the valuable, beautiful asset that it is, and promote it accordingly. Those, again, are conversations I've had with Ms. Smith at Visit Bastrop. Susan tells me she's excited about all this. Susan's priority, because this isn't what she's been asked to do, has not been to help us figure out what that niche for the convention center is, but she will now. And she will also, and that the DMO will also focus promoting local events to potential visitors. That hasn't been the model so far, but I think we all agree that our visitors are attracted to local events because visitors want to know what the locals are doing, and that is attractive. And so, again, this is largely about facilitating a collaborative conversation and an events plan that highlights the availability of the convention center. This plan also has a bit of a different role for Victoria Pensick. Victoria is an underutilized, tremendous asset in this organization, and this is where this connection to what I was saying earlier about Tracy Waldron and her role comes into play. Tracy's done a great job of staying in touch with our community assets in those support groups, but I'm gonna shift that burden of keeping up with and communicating with those assets and support groups out of the finance department. Yeah, we still care about how they report and how they spend money, but the real focus is on, again, that collaborative planning arrangement. We're not just handing them hot dollars and saying, okay, we'll see you next quarter. We're gonna work with them. We're gonna structure that, and we're gonna ask Victoria to keep up with those relationships. A focus area priority of the City Council is communication. We think that because we have all of these partners, all these assets, all these networks in the community, that we need to intentionally ask that they help us in our communication efforts. All of these groups, the civic organizations included, have email distribution lists. Council, you guys have expressed to me that you feel like we're missing the mark in not always able to communicate with everybody that we need to communicate with, especially folks who aren't tuned in to social media. This is where those networks come into play. We don't need to recreate those networks. We need to take advantage of them and ask them to help us convey the city's message. One of the things we're working on is a communications and messaging strategy that will create a template for exactly how we do all that, and we've got a team working on that right now. So all of these things support the Main Street District. All of these things support the Historic District. All of these things support treating the Main Street District and the Historic District as the core and the soul of the city that it is. Other resources that are going to be part of this mix is the Information Technology Department. Information technology is all about information. It's all about information management, and so I think there's some synergy there. And also with the library. The library is about community engagement. And there has been more of a disconnect than I like between the library and its programming and communication efforts with the rest of the city organization. We don't want to squelch any of that. What we want to do is take advantage of it and make sure we're as efficient and effective as possible in how we message, and making sure everybody's with the city organization is singing from the same page of music. The team has already heard me say, and what this helps us do is operationalize this, is communication and messaging is is everyone's responsibility. Every employee in the organization sends messages. It is not ever going to be my approach that I have to approve every message, I have to edit every message. What is my job is to make sure that those vital few important messages and those themes are clear and established. Everybody understands that. And then a big part of what the communications team is all about is ensuring that everybody knows where they fit in all of that. That kind of thing has been pulled off in much larger organizations than the city of Bastrop, and I'm convinced we're able to do it here. So, yeah, so thank you, Mayor, and I hit the wrong button. So yeah, as I hinted at before, so I see Rebecca's role being one of wearing two hats. She will be assistant city manager and have all those reports to her. I'm asking Rebecca to do assistant city manager level work, and at the same time, she'll also be the face of the Main Street program and will also serve as the director of the Main Street district. And to let council know, we have spoken with the state of Texas Main Street organization, laid out this plan to them in some detail, and the director of that organization has responded that she's actually very excited about this and thinks it's a great plan, which I really appreciate hearing. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir?
He just answered.
Okay, great. Good. So, here's
one more question.
Yes, sir.
With, you just mentioned about Ms. Daniels and Victoria also. In those boxes in that reorganizational chart, where exactly I understand what you said, they're rows, but where do they fit in those boxes exactly?
Oh, thank you. So we're asking Ms. Danielson to serve as events manager, and we're asking Ms. Pensick to serve as community impact manager. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, and while I'm on that chart, at top left is a reclassified position, customer support specialist. We will ask that person to sit at the front desk. That person will greet customers that come into City Hall, although most of our customers now, I believe, and I think this trend will continue, aren't coming into the building to see me or Trey or anybody on that end of the building. Most of our customers are customers of our building permit function and our utility billing function. And I think that's a great thing. That is where most of the customer service happens. And an objective we have, we're not able to pull the trigger on this just yet, but we will, is cross-training our utility billing customer service specialists so that they are equipped to be the intake on building permits as well. I've seen that model work in other places, and I think that'll work here as well, and will improve our customer service presence. And then there's a public information management role at the top right. That's a function we've got targeted for Colin to help oversee and manage the official messaging from the city of Bastrop, and will help me in making sure the organization is all on the same page in terms of what our messaging is. So to wrap all that up, the relationships that will be managed in this realm, thank you for blowing it up, Colin, is Visit Bastrop, all of those community assets, that includes the Historic Society and Visitor Center, the Opera House and the Art Center, all of those community support groups, Bastrop YMCA, you see the council focus areas, really importantly, uniquely Bastrop, which speaks to, again, the downtown area being the core of the city, communication, and scrolling to the right. Boards are the Main Street Advisory Board, Library Board. We are moving the responsibility for the Youth Advisory Board to this group, and cross-functional teams is the aforementioned communications and special events team. Council, thanks for listening. Can I answer any questions?
Council, any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Ennis?
All I have to say is well thought out. Excellent presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rogers?
I just wanted to thank Paul because I did have several questions when this all came out, so I wanted you to thank you for answering them all and making it clear for me.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
I really appreciate the linear management process you put into place, letting people have the authority as well as the responsibility for the task at hand. So I'm looking forward to you implementing this plan. I think it's well thought out from a management standpoint.
City Manager, I appreciate that. I know we're not voting on anything tonight, but council should be prepared, as you pointed out in your manager report earlier, that we expect to see this on the December 8th, just in because of the department part of creating a new department. I really like the idea of the things that you've grouped together and giving everybody an opportunity to really succeed at what they're good at, and appreciate clearly the thought that went into how you organized it. So good job. All right, council, we don't have to vote on that, so we are going to move forward. We're on citizen comments. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone registered for citizen comments?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, that means we get to move to page 3. We are moving to items for individual consideration after having already taken care of the consent agenda. Item 9A, consider and adopt on first and final reading ordinance number 2020-29 as an emergency measure ratifying temporary emergency orders enacted by the mayor in her capacity as the emergency management director in regards to the local state of disaster for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, or safety. Council, I'll let you know in advance that I do not have an amendment to our phasing plan. We're not prepared to go to phase 4. We're continuing in phase 3, but I do, as has become our custom, want to give you a quick update on where we stand on COVID-19. We are on day number 240. The emergency operations will be demobilized at the end of the year, but that being said, County Commissioners Court approved on Monday keeping the portal open for the first 3 months of 2021. So I know there's some concerns for testing. There's all kinds of reasons to be tested, and it's not just having symptoms. There's folks that need to be tested to go back to work, folks that need to be tested to be able to visit somebody in a long-term care facility. So that funding will be available, and the portal will be in effect through the first 3 months. We'll all have to just be working with the vaccine as it comes out and how we handle all of that. As they finalize at the end of the year, they will be updating the dashboard once a week. So that's another change that they're making. Currently, as of today, there are 2,077 cases that have been confirmed in Bastrop County. Of that, 1,939 are recovered. That gives us active cases of 105. A week ago, we had active cases of 96. So we're kind of hovering right around that 100 mark. Unfortunately, over the last week, we did have an increase in deaths of 1 to bring us to a total of 33. When I spoke with you last time, we talked about the BIMAX Now testing that would be available for the ISDs, and at the update this morning, we believe McDade either got it yesterday or will get it by the end of the week, and the remaining ISDs in Bastrop County should have those tests by the end of November. That allows the school nurse, if there's a student that's showing symptoms or having problems, they can in 15 minutes find out whether or not they have COVID, and then they'll take care of protocols after that. The Texas, for the state, the positivity rate is 11.24%. Bastrop County is at 4.7. That is a really important number. Other things kick in if we get above 5%. So we're wanting to keep those numbers down. And the positivity rate for the state, 10, there's some things that change at 10, there's some things that change at 15. One of the things that we've been always working on through all of this emergency is not wanting to overwhelm the medical facilities. So I will tell you that from a hospitalization standpoint for the state of Texas, 9.1% of the people in the hospital are in the hospital for COVID, 9.1% for the state. For the Austin MSA, which is where we are get our care, it's 3.46. So we are doing remarkably well. We know we are blessed to live in Bastrop. Just be glad that we do not live in El Paso, where the hospitalizations are 40.98% of all of the hospitalizations in El Paso. So we wish them the best of luck, and we know there's a strike team there, but just trying to put in perspective where we stand. In the Austin MSA, that I told you that we're 3.46% of the hospitalizations. Currently, there are 140 hospitalizations in that 5-county MSA, and there are 45 people in ICU and 22 people on ventilators. And you guys are familiar, over the last few months, we've been like 18, 16, 21, so we're staying right in that same realm. The testing that was done over the last week is 289 to bring us to a total of 6,686. The call center took 37 calls last week, which brought the total calls that they have taken care of as 3,006 calls since this all started. They are doing such a phenomenal job. People are calling them about everything. Some of the questions I get, I'm a little amused that they think the COVID hotline should have the answer to that. But when you do a great job, people expect great things from you. We have one family in housing. So the last thing that I want to mention is Thanksgiving is just around the corner. And Thanksgiving's a wonderful thing. We have a lot of things to be thankful for. I'm going to tell you that just because they're family, it does not mean that they cannot spread the virus. And when you're pulling family together, if they're coming from other geographical areas, if it's people that you're not used to being around, and quite frankly, you know, some of the kids, and we know that there are many folks out there that are asymptomatic, and what you don't want is 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, grandma and grandpa that are getting sick, or young children that are getting sick. So be thankful, be cognizant of the environment that you're in, and please help us stay in the 3.46% and not have a spike like we've had in El Paso. We're all adults. We can make good adult decisions. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson has pointed out to me that his mom trained him to wash his hands on a regular basis long before COVID was around. And so I have confidence that all of us have that ability, and I would encourage you to take good care of yourself as we move through these next few months. That takes us to item 9B, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2020-30 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, repealing and replacing Chapter 12, Traffic and Vehicles, Articles 12.12, Golf Cart, and providing for findings of fact, adoption, repealer, severability, and enforcement, establishing an effective date, proper notice, and meeting. Chief Nagy.
Colin? Yep.
If you're following along at home, we're on page 129. Chief?
All right. Just got a couple of slides. We'll get started. All right, that's the right one. All right, good evening. So hopefully tonight we'll go ahead and finish up the golf cart ordinance. I have some updates from the first reading. The first, I added a couple definitions. The first is going to be a safety belt, so that's just a lap and/or shoulder strap included in the middle as the original equipment, or it can be added. So some of the golf cart manufacturers have them, I think, pre-installed, or they can be installed at the place of sale, or the individual, once they buy the golf cart, can install that. And then also a lengthy but pretty basic definition of what secured means. Just means they have to be in a seat belt. So there's some further updates. On page 7, 2F, I changed annual to biannual for continuity. The same thing, page 7, 2H, state highway was changed to just highway. And then finally, on page 5, I deleted the operator of a golf cart should not allow any children under the age of 4 years in a golf cart at any particular time. So this is also an update. So I added on page 6J, the operator of a golf cart shall not allow any persons aged 6 or younger to ride in a golf cart on a public street unless they are seated and secured with a seatbelt or harness dedicated to hold, designed to hold passengers. So I think this is what we kind of discussed last time, and we've covered that base. Here's a real quick picture of just the sample seatbelt kits you can buy from just about any place. They're about $100, and they can be added to the golf cart. This is a sample harness. There really wasn't much outside the seat belt to keep younger children in. This is really the only thing I could find was just kind of a safety harness. I don't know if I want to call it necessarily a seat belt or a child safety seat, but it will at least keep those children where they're supposed to be when they're riding in a golf cart. Just like I'd said, child safety seats do not appear to be available for any golf cart applications, so it's just to keep the child in the seat. They won't offer any protection if worst case scenario, a golf cart is hit. So we've got to make a decision. We want to finalize the golf cart as written, so it's as written with the age 6 or younger must be in a seat belt, so there's no minimum of a child that can be in the actual golf cart. And do we have any questions?
Councilmember Ennis?
I just had willies about the 6 and younger. I think it ought to be higher than that.
Okay.
And it's just a gut feeling. You know, kids can unhook and bolt out of something that travels that slowly pretty quickly, and they're going to be on the street and you've got a car coming the other direction. I don't know. I may just be batting at windmills, and it's up to the rest of the council, but I still feel like we ought to raise it a little bit higher.
So for clarification, we want to raise, they have to be in a seat belt higher than 6?
Yeah,
okay. All right.
I'd say 8.
Okay.
So they're substantial enough that a seat belt would control them in the seat, and that they would hopefully be educated enough not to unhook and get out of a moving vehicle quickly. It's.
Councilmember Rogers?
I'm sorry, but I thought last time when we spoke about this, we weren't going to allow children under the age of 6 to be in the golf cart, not just that they had to be belted in.
Okay, so they're legal. Can you help me?
I was just curious at how we were going in that direction.
I thought we had discussed that children under the age or 6 and younger needed to be in some sort of restraint.
Okay.
Maybe I read that wrong.
But that, Chief, that's really the point of your question, is we can clarify it right now. So
yes.
So to Councilmember Ennis's point, we can say if you're filling the age, you got to be in a seatbelt, and we can also say if you're at a certain age or younger, you don't need to be on. You can't be on the golf cart. Period. So.
Well, I'm thinking, okay, so if you've got an 18-month-old, you're not really going to put them in a seatbelt. You know, they're pretty much too little for that sort of kind of riding. So I think you need to have a cutoff of they have to be at least a certain age to even get in the golf cart.
Okay.
You know, that's where I thought we went last week. I thought we weren't going to allow anybody under the age of 6 to be riding out there in the golf cart. Now, if you want to go to 4, that's fine, but I think having anything under that, sitting by themselves, any kind of seatbelt's not going to hold in an 18-month-old.
That was my understanding too.
Okay.
I mean, just, what does the rest of the council think? You know, I don't know. It just says under 6, that could be a day old.
Yes, yeah. So I think there was just, I was a little confused on what we were asking for.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
But I think our discussion was two-phased. I think it had to do with the age of a child, what would be an acceptable age, and the other was a question relative, is there any kind of restraint devices designed for a golf cart? So I think we're conflating two different discussions that we had on there. I'm in agreement that we need to have an age limitation on who can ride in a golf cart, but I also think we should encourage safety belts or some sort of safety seating for at least what would be considered a child, you know, maybe perhaps children under 12. Restriction of people under 6, no ride from 6 to 12 in appropriate securement, perhaps. I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion. But there was two different conversations, so I don't think you were confused. I think we just conflated
the original from the original was, I think it was 4 and younger we were prohibiting. And then we were working on trying to find out who needed to be in a child or some sort of restraint 5 and above.
So you're saying you were prohibiting 4 and younger.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding was all I did last time was ask you to raise it from 4 and under to 6 and under.
Okay.
Not just allow anything.
Okay.
That's at least where I thought we were leaving it at. Now,
May I
if it's
make a
regular
suggestion
seatbelt's fine.
also?
Just one moment, Councilmember Jackson, let
So I mean,
Councilmember
just regular
Rogers finish.
seatbelts, I mean, a 6-year-old just in a
I
regular
can't hear
seatbelt
you.
is just fine with me, but I think under 6 is just a little bit too much.
Okay.
Councilmember Jackson?
I couldn't hear what was just said, and I kind of didn't hear what you said, but I was going to make a suggestion that maybe combining this and say that we raise the minimum age to ride in a golf cart somewhere between 10 and 12, and of course I think the safety restrictions should be suggested strongly also. I think if we could combine those together, that I would be happy with it. I don't know about the rest of the council, but I think the minimum age needs to be raised, and that we strongly suggest the restraints on any youth that are riding in it, as well as, you know.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. That's essentially what Councilmember Rogers said. So I
couldn't hear, so I didn't know. Okay.
So what and we can talk about it. It seems like where you guys are is we're saying if you're less than 6, you're not in the golf cart, and do you want to say 6 to 12, you need to have a seatbelt, 6 to 10, 6 to 8, somebody say an age, 12. So let me, devil's advocate, because that's the role I play. I have a golf cart, and I have a grandchild that's sitting on my lap that I'm holding on my lap. Are we okay with that? Are we not okay with that? Because if we're saying less than 6, that means I can't take my kindergartner to the park in the golf cart. And I'm old grandma, and I have a hard time walking, and that's the only way I can take that child to the park.
Actually, kindergarten is 6.
Pre-kindergarten, 4 or 5, because they're not in school,
Well,
right?
I'm sure the chief's not going to drive around, you know. You're
I
going to break the
understand.
rule you're going to break the rules one or the other, no matter what we pick. Somebody's going to break the rules. I just think, you know.
We're giving guidance for
School age
reasonableness.
is, you know, if you're old enough to ride in the school bus and go to school, then you probably should be able to ride in the golf cart. That's where I'm kind of figuring that
Perfect.
school age, you know.
Okay.
If you want to put your newborn next to you, I can't stop you, but that's your gamble.
But you're not going to encourage that. Councilmember Peterson?
That's your golf cart, Grandma.
All right, so council, what I believe the direction that we are saying is that our ordinance is going to say if you are under the age of 6, you should not be riding in a golf cart. And if you are, and help me out, city attorney, over 6 and under 12, whatever's the right way to frame that, if you are in the golf cart, you must have some sort of a safety device. You need to be secured, secured, utilize a safety belt, something like that. I think, council, is that your intention? Okay.
Excellent.
So we need a motion that includes those words. City Attorney, you want to help with the right way to phrase that for someone to be able to make a motion? Do we just say 6, under the age of 6, not allowed, between 6 and 12 needs to be secured?
Yes. I think we've got that written down. So if you make a motion, that's one of the conditions, is that the most recent draft is what you're voting on, and the approved version will have that edit in it.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the second reading with the amendments that have been suggested.
I second it.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Rogers. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Chief, I want to commend you on your investigative techniques and research on this. I realize it may seem a small matter in the various job duties that you perform, but I mean, this is excellent work that you've done, and I really appreciate it. It gave me an education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate it.
Good job, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council, for updating our golf cart ordinance and keeping our citizens safe. We're moving on to item 9C. Hold public hearing and consider action to approve the first of ordinance number 2020-31 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending Bastrop Building Block B3 Code Section 2.3.004, annual adoption of schedule of uniform submittal dates for site plans and place type zoning changes, and Bastrop Building Block Technical Manual 1.2.002, uniform submittal dates as shown in Exhibit A, establishing a repealing clause providing severability and providing an effective date and place on the December 8th, 2020 consent agenda. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this item that's on your agenda tonight is in response to House Bill 3167, which was adopted during the 86th legislative session last year, that now requires local municipalities to review certain plans and plats within a 30-day time frame, that we can only have it in our hands for 30 days. It was referred to as the shot clock bill, was one of the names for it. The idea is that it provides a predictable upfront information timeline. In doing so, it's caused us and a lot of cities to adopt a lot more formalized submittal processes and stricter timeframes to make sure we're meeting all of those legal deadlines. So as such, as part of the B3 codes, we adopted these uniform submittal schedules that for plats, public improvement plans, site plans, have specific days that you can submit those on. And then we, which is a Monday generally, unless there's a holiday, we turn those comments around in a 2-week time frame. When the applicant then submits, we usually turn those around in a week time frame, so we can, if they have to get to a border commission, if they have to go, if they're administrative, we have 2 weeks. So that's the general kind of timeline that we're looking at. There are also some notification requirements for a few plats. We also adopt the schedule for the rezoning because there are requirements for notification. So that's what we adopt that schedule for, not because we're on a limited time frame, but we do have minimum time frames that we have to notify people before we take those forward for public hearings. So you'll see we have a plat. This is our plat schedule, which those are the ones that are going to go to P&Z for approval. We also have what is now we're calling our zoning concept schemes and our neighborhood regulating plans. Those are neighborhood regulating plan was a new plan that sometimes does have to go to before P&Z if there's a conflict with the codes. And then we have administrative plats as well, that there are some plats in the local government code that staff is allowed to review and approve when they're fairly minor. And then also our site development plans and public improvement plans. So we space these out. It's generally one submittal date a month per each type of plan. There are opportunities for an applicant, if they choose to waive that time frame of their own volition, that they can submit on any Monday, because then we're not bound to that 30-day timeline. That being said, we still are turning around the comments every 2 weeks is our general, unless there's a lot of issues we got to work out with the client, customer. So we took this to P&Z at their last meeting, and we had a couple of questions. One of the concerns was, with this tight time frame, when we take it to P&Z, if P&Z doesn't get a quorum, then the plan or plat would automatically approve itself, which is true. But we worked in a couple wiggle rooms. One, there's a 3 extra day in that schedule that should we not get a quorum on that Thursday, we could call another meeting by the Monday. Additionally, as part of the code updates, some amendments that were made in January, all the ZBA members can also serve as alternates on the P&Z. So with between P&Z and 5 ZBA members, we should be able to get a 5-person quorum for that meeting. So I feel confident. Additionally, staff isn't going to bring a plat to P&Z that we don't feel is complete and ready to move forward. So with all those safeguards, I think that'll protect the city there. Another concern was if for some reason there are extra conditions, that's part of the local government code, conditions added at the P&Z meeting, that the P&Z has to reconvene within 15 days to review if the applicant has made those changes, and that is something if conditions are added at P&Z. That being said, those conditions have to be specifically referenced from the code. So it has to be a justifiable code concern that, again, staff is reviewing these. We have multiple departments that review these. So we feel that everything that comes before should be complete. But in the case that does happen, yes, P&Z would have to reconvene within 15 days to clear those conditions. So those are the 2 concerns that P&Z brought up, but they did recommend approving this unanimously. Any questions?
Councilmember Rogers?
I was going to move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers. Hold on, we got to have a public hearing before we can approve.
Yeah, we do adopt these into the code.
Yes. And the comment that I wanted to make, and it's a question that I think I know the answer to, and that is if someone waives the shot clock, then they're still in MyGov, and we can still see if it's been 3 days or 2 weeks or what, right? There's still a process for that. And you did confirm that if they do waive, you are still trying to do it within 2 weeks.
Yes, we are still trying to turn our comments around every 2 weeks. There's a few occasions when sometimes we can take an extra week, but we meet every Thursday with the Development Review Committee, and the different approvers are able to make their recommendations or approvals after that. So.
Okay, and really, City Manager, I'm bringing up that point because you had mentioned earlier there's some public relations there. I'm wanting people to know that if they waive that shot clock, there's still accountability, and specifically through MyGov, there's tracking record for everyone to know how long things have taken. And
yeah, and it also gives the applicant, some of them, ability to turn some projects in concurrently. So they can actually get things done faster rather than, because that is one of the features of the way we adopted the code was that you had to approve everything sequentially. So it gave us time to work that out. But if you waive your time, sometimes we can review some of those concurrently to speed the process along.
I think this is, my personal opinion is that this House bill is one that had an intent and a goal, and it has absolutely countermanded that, and I don't know of anybody that's getting things done faster as a result of that. So I really appreciate the work that you've done, and special thanks to our 9 planning and zoning commissioners that vet this stuff. When we see that they've voted unanimously, I think that's why Councilmember Rogers is like, done talking, let's get on with it. So with that, I am officially opening
Madam Mayor,
oh, I'm sorry.
Can I seek some clarification?
Please.
With the city manager's new reorganization plan, under the zoning concept schemes and neighborhood regulating plan, it references planning director recommendations. Under the new reorg plan, there is no designated planning director.
It's Trey Job.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was what was meant in this, so that we couldn't come back later and say it was not clear. But now I'm clear. Thank you.
Anything else, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
I think we need to have a public hearing, ma'am.
All right. I'm officially opening the public hearing. Madam Secretary, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, Mayor.
I'm officially closing the public hearing and available for a motion.
I move to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. We're now on the last page of the agenda. On the top of page 4, item 9D, consider action to approve resolution number R 2020-111 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, establishing priorities for the 87th legislation in Texas and authorizing the mayor, mayor pro tem, city manager, and city attorney to communicate with the office of the governor and Texas legislature on behalf of the City of Bastrop, Texas, and establishing an effective date. Ms. Gleason.
Yes, in April 2019, the City of Bastrop City Council passed a resolution laying out our legislative priorities for the 86th legislative session. With that being said, on January 12th of 2021, the 87th legislative session will begin. So it is that time once again for us to lay out our legislative priorities. With the resolution, it includes a total of 8 support clauses, with 4 of them being specific to our local community, so I'm going to focus on those. The resolution includes the support of funding for our historic Old Iron Bridge, the support of legislation that would fund police digital evidence storage, the support of legislation that would allow the use of hotel occupancy tax in municipal parks for the construction of improvements, trails and sidewalks, lodging establishments, and other tourist attractions or related public facilities. And finally, the support of this year's Texas Municipal League legislative program. The resolution also includes opposition to anything that would erode the ability of local leaders to respond to local challenges or local opportunities, as well as anything that would reduce the ability of municipal government to collect revenue sources. Further, it includes general administration clauses, including the allowance of city staff to undertake certain administrative duties, including providing a copy of this resolution to the Texas Municipal League, the media, our legislative delegation, as well as granting the mayor, mayor pro tem, city manager, and city attorney the ability to advocate on behalf of the city when it comes to this resolution. With that being said, it is my recommendation that this council approves resolution number R 2020-111. Any questions?
Move for approval.
Just one second, Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Ennis?
Ms. Gleason, can you go into more detail about the what we're actually talking about supporting with respect to the Old Iron Bridge?
Sure. We are asking for support from the legislator that would include grant funding for the historic bridge. So we are supporting the creation of any legislation that would include grants for any historic bridge structure.
Okay.
So we would like them to create those grants through legislation.
I'm just interested in the vehicle we're proposing.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, you want to?
Can I take a stab at that?
Sure.
I think, one of the things we're going to do with this resolution is provide it to our legislative delegation as well as any committee or caucuses that may be interested in rural programming. By providing it to our legislators, we're letting them know that that's an important aspect of Bastrop, and we're looking for ways to save that bridge as well as to mitigate any danger to the river or to any other citizen on that. So I think that's why we've placed it in there to emphasize the importance of that bridge to this community.
And Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, if you'd allow me to add that part of it is we're not exactly sure where we're going to find that money, so it is intentionally written vague. I have already had conversations with Representative Serrier, and I actually got the Chief of Staff's telephone number for Senator Eckhart this afternoon, and so our intention is to pursue any and all avenues to find, if we can't find the entire funding, find a portion of the funding, even if it becomes an avenue of going through one of the other, whether it's CAPCOG or Campo or whoever, NGOs, any of them, we're just going to turn over every rock we can possibly find. That's the intention.
It was such a broad brush stroke that I wasn't sure where you were zeroing in, but that gives me a good idea. Thank you.
And one thing, I'm fine with it, but I was the one that talked about the police digital evidence storage, and I'm not really so much looking for them to give us money, although of course we would accept that money, as much as giving us the ability to utilize their buying potential. So and it would be great if they would give us money, but I don't want our legislative agenda, it's my recommendation that every question can't be, give me money, give me money, give me money. So really what we're trying to do is be able for rural and smaller cities, if we can combine, be able to get like, the big boys rates for that digital storage or have access to programs, that type of thing. So, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson, do you think we're cutting ourselves out of anything with making it, is there something that we should add in addition to funding support? Is it funding support and, I'm not really sure what word I would put in.
No, I think the wording in that is just right, because we're going to take advantage of the funding opportunity, so that those are support opportunities, and that's what we're looking at.
There is, across the board, the digital, and Chief Nagy could give us a much better explanation than I can, but the cost of storing the recordings from the body cams is just incredible. And since there is renewed interest in those body cams, I'm really hoping that if the state can get some great iCloud rate, Google rate, whatever it is, if there's a vehicle, if we can have access to that could save us money and allow us to be able to save that digital recording at the same time, that's just really kind of a win for everyone. So, and that's another one that I've already had a conversation with Cyrie's office about.
Got a question about the hotel occupancy tax for infrastructure.
So this was brought to TML's in our legislative group from the city of Fredericksburg. And it was the idea not mandating that cities use it for that, but providing it as an option. And it was the point that when folks come to spend the night, they'd like to be able to, in our case, walk to the river, walk to downtown, find a park. And if that enhances the experience, that's a good reason to use those funds, and that really does benefit the hotels and make it more desirable to come. So the way that it was written was not mandating, but just cities could opt in to spending their hot funds that way if they so choose.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Jackson, I think you had a motion.
I'd like to move for approval of resolution number R-2020-111.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Jackson.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. This is the part where the mayor forgot to ask the city manager before the meeting started. Do we need to go into executive session?
I do not believe we do.
Mayor and council, we have a short update on that executive session item. If you would like to receive it, it'll take about 5 minutes or less. No action is required this meeting.
All right, council, we're going to go. It is 9:56, and we are going to go into a brief executive session to discuss the following. City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and 551.072 to seek the advice of legal counsel and to deliberate upon the acquisition of real property interests associated with the construction of wastewater treatment plant number 3 at 385 State Highway 304, Unit B, Bastrop, Texas 78602, and its collection systems, including all related agreements, authorizations, easements, resolutions, and associated legal actions. We are in executive session.
I don't recall an executive session where it took me longer to fill out the certified agenda than the actual executive session took.
We good? All right, it is 10:02 and we are out of executive session. For item number 11, take any necessary or appropriate action. There will be no action as a result of executive session, which brings us to item 12. Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If you happen to see a veteran tomorrow, say thank you for your service. With that, I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
I have a motion to adjourn from Councilmember Peterson and a second from Councilmember Rogers with the encouragement for everyone to think of that tomorrow. With that, it is 10:03 and we are adjourned.